Have you ever thought about being pulled into a game you barely cleared, but this time not as an overpowered MC, but as a weak-ass tyrant? Let's jump into the thrilling story of a gamer who gets teleported into a game where monsters lurk at every corner, and the fate of the Empire is in his hands. This story starts with a young gamer who is overjoyed by the system notification on his computer that he has finally cleared the absurdly difficult game since its release after 10 years. Being an outstanding game streamer who always cleared challenging games, he began boasting about his skills to his equally surprised audience. When our hero receives a $300 donation, he gets cocky for his insane gaming skills. Our boy is happy, knowing there's no more incredible accomplishment for a gamer than having good skills and a lively audience. However, as he pondered this, he came across a comment that wished his teammate, Saintess, to survive until the end of the game. He is speechless because he has realized his audience has attached themselves to the players during this long journey to clear the game. Anyhow, he is relaxed because it doesn't matter if all the players survive. What matters most to him is that his player, Lucas, stood out as the MVP in Hellish and Iron Man mode by defeating the irresistible lake monster. As the end of the game approached, he also felt a heavy heart seeing Lucas, whom he had carried through countless battles, now dissolve into pixels. However, he gets carried away by chats that state he deserves an award from the game developer for being an undeniable champion. Our hero tried to downplay his sneaky desire for the reward, but his audience could tell he was just being modest. Nevertheless, he knows it is impossible to get a reward because the game's officials have disappeared and haven't released another game in the past 10 years. He leans back, wondering how the official will approach him. Suddenly, a message pops up on the screen, revealing it's the game's director. Our boy feels over the moon for a while, and his audience is equally surprised if that is the real director. While they are still processing, another message pops up stating that the director had initially given up after waiting a long time for someone to clear the game. However, he feels relieved as someone finally ended the losing streak. But the streamer downplays it by saying he doesn't need to thank him, and is still quite unsure what is happening. His confusion arises when multiple messages keep popping up, stating that the director is now hopeful as he finds a capable guy to help them. He thought for a while that the director might be hinting towards the sequel of this game, but he gets taken aback by a thought, wondering if it could be fake because why would a director be watching his streams in any case? So he decides to whoop his ass out of the stream. As he tries to speak, he suddenly feels dizzy. He thinks his audience will call an ambulance, but he passes out. Meanwhile, the system thanks him for playing the actual game, Protect the Empire. Suddenly, some strange liquid starts falling from above, hitting the ground hard. The impact wakes our hero up, and he realizes he's in a lord's body, just as a huge rock comes crashing down in front of him. He freaks out at the sudden dramatic change in everything around him. He smells gunpowder and feels about to pass out because a colossal cannon has just gone off with a loud boom. Multiple explosions occur as he observes a red flag under which armed forces charge at the enemy, trying to stop them from climbing the wall. The soldiers are stabbing the enemies below the wall, and some green fluid splashes on their faces. He looks on fixedly, wondering if he has descended into a war. One soldier spots him and rushes over with a terrifying look on his face. His panic increases as he assumes the soldier sees him as an enemy, and he pleads for him to stay away. The soldier kneels and bows his head, apologizing as if he is in the presence of a king. The sudden turn of events entirely puzzled our hero. A strange fluid flies toward them as he tells the soldier to pull it together. The impact slams him to the ground, and the flames engulf many soldiers. After barely surviving, he pants and wonders about this insanely apocalyptic world. A soldier cuts off his thoughts and orders his men to defend the wall from the enemies coming in. One soldier rushes toward the wall but gets stabbed by the long legs of a monster. The creature brutally tears him apart, and blood splatters over our hero's face. Seeing a torn arm right in front of him freaks him out. Two more helpless soldiers get sliced into pieces, and he starts to panic. Thinking about what kind of crazy monster could be on the other side of the wall, a huge spider crawls up the wall and into the fortress and stops right in front of the streamer. The spider lets out a loud and piercing scream, making the streamer cover his ears with his hands. Watching the infantry, a soldier shouted for help. Still, the spider slashed and killed him before he could even finish his command. Our boy feels frozen, just like in the worst nightmare where you're unable to move even the slightest in the face of danger. As the spider gets near him, it raises its sharp leg to kill. He trembles with the thought that his life is about to end like any other ordinary guy who dies without anyone noticing. Out of the blue, a blonde knight suddenly whipped out his sword with immense power and sliced the spider clean in half. Before turning to our hero, he flashed a pleasant smile as he remarked that his highness never looked that tired. Our boy is still catching his breath from the surprising entrance of this new dude. The blonde knight kneels in front of him and asks if he's good. Our hero's mind races as he tries to place the familiar face. Then it clicks that this must be Lucas, the main character from the game he just finished. Lucas cried when our hero called him by his name. He told him that after all these years of guarding him, he had never once remembered who Lucas was. But now, hearing his name from His Majesty's lips, it hit differently. But a sudden realization strikes our hero. He spins around and finds himself standing on a tower, facing a swarm of black spiders charging at them. He realizes he's stuck inside the insanely tough game he'd been playing just moments ago. The mission of this game is to protect the Empire from wave after wave of savage beasts that outnumber his side. These nasty spiders shoot a strange acid from their backs at the tower, and its impact weakens the tower with massive explosions. Our hero wonders how the hell he even got into this insane game. Watching him in shock, Knighty Lucas tells him that their defense line is about to collapse under the savage army of black spiders. But there's still hope. If he survives the enemy for just 30 more minutes, the spiders will have to retreat since they cannot fight after sunset. He barely finishes his words before a swarm of spiders crawls around them. He tells our hero to stay close while he takes care of these creeps. Even though death is lurking around, our boy is more worried about why he's being protected, especially by Lucas, the main character of this game. The spiders pull back as the sun goes down, but not before immensely damaging the soldiers. Lucas ends up covered in green fluid after taking on a ridiculous number of spiders by himself. Our guy is in a daze, staring at the massive number of spider bodies scattered all over the ground. He asks Lucas what day it is and where they are. Lucas tells him it's the last day of February, and they're standing on top of the advanced base in the fortressed city. This revelation made our gamer geek grit his teeth. He remembered passing through this exact spot hundreds of times in the game, and had done so for nearly 6 months. Right after, he realizes he must have pulled into the character of Ash, the born hater. He calls out his name to Lucas, who assures him that he is indeed His Highness, Lord Ash. At this point, he feels like no one has worse luck than him because Lord Ash is a lunatic, the third prince of the Empire, who has already wiped out most of the fortressed city's forces by his lame-ass decisions. The worrying part is that this character gets brutally killed in the early game tutorials. Our hero's stuck in this damn character from the game, and it feels like the worst thing that ever happened to him. When our boy gets into the commander's bunker, he curses his new body for carelessly going to the defense line because his fate of dying is already near. He couldn't believe that he got pulled into such an insidious game. This game is famous for its formidable Hell level and an Iron Man mode. Ultimately, this game combines both modes to an Iron Man Hell level of difficulty that is only beaten by our hero. But the craziest part is that our hero knows how to beat the whole game except for this one. He opens the system panels, and the thought of inevitable defeat starts creeping into his mind. For he knows the game's tutorial is made so that only Lucas survives while everyone else in the fortress meets their end. It took him 3 years to clear this game, and the period of 2.5 years was only spent fighting the spider army. He wonders how to defend the fortress against such a large army the next day. He shakes to avoid the fear of the looming spider army. He insists on fighting back using his experience and knowledge as a classic gamer geek. But his confidence quickly turns to confusion when he notices on the system panel that there are a staggering 1,000 black spiders, all with levels between 55 and 60. On top of that, all they had for defense was a weak wall and some old mana cannons sitting in the inventory. He tries to calm himself down and thinks about using Iron Man mode, but this mode has no load and save option, so if he makes one mistake, the spiders will wipe him out for good. He swipes across the system to find something with slightly better odds, for he knows there is always an escape from playing games, regardless of the difficulty. Then, he pauses at the panel as he finds what he is looking for. He bursts through the door, yelling for Lucas, and orders him to bring in the reinforcements. Lucas asks what happened because he hadn't used them for a long time. Our boy has figured out a way to counter the spider monsters, so he tells him not to argue and to gather them. When his team gathered, he clearly remembered their faces, although they looked upset. He recalled their names, such as Lily, Ken, and the kid Damien, because he had watched them brutally die multiple times in the game. He breaks the silence by pointing at Damien, who is curling up and looking sad. Lily tells him that Damien's friend got killed in the spider attack, so she requests his lord to go easy on him. Our gamer geek remembered that although Damien had a healer skill, his damage status made him useless in the game, so he always died first. However, he assigns them their roles for tomorrow's battle. He looks at Lily, a mage with fire skills. He appoints her the team's primary damage dealer, who will act as their tank to blow away the spider formations, Lily argues, but he dismisses her concerns and looks at Ken. As the defensive knight, he can withstand the enemy's attack with his strenuous body. Ash assigns him the task of confusing the enemies by shifting their focus away from the fortress. Then it's turn for Damien, the healer, a much-needed skill in this game. But Ash assigned him an unlikely task by appointing him as a sniper of their team, leaving him speechless. Lastly, he appoints Lucas as the commander of the rest of the soldiers to foolproof their attacking line. After giving them their roles, he notices they're just standing there like they're in a silent movie. Ken cuts the quiet as he strikes his arm against the wall and shouts that Ash's strategies have previously dragged everyone who carries them to death. Now he also wants his reinforcement to die. Our boy is taken aback because that was the insane Lord Ash, not him. He thinks that his current idea is still idealistic against the thick enemy. Still, typical strategies would also fail against the spider army. So he has to be a lunatic and act like Ash. He glares at Ken with an icy look. He demands answers in a chilling voice for disobeying the commander-in-chief and the Emperor's son. All of them simultaneously tremble in fear, and Ken barely pays his apologies to His Highness. Our hero knows that he needs his character to retain his authority as a lunatic lord, otherwise his team will not obey and will be killed by the spiders. As his plan of fighting the enemy is impulsive, he needs them to follow him like his dogs. He goes to Lily, draws out his dagger, and stabs it into her chest. Lily shivered and screamed with pain. When all others watch their lord's insanity, Ash asks them menacingly if their skills are ready to carry out their respective tasks. Ken sweats up and wonders if Lord Ash has gone crazy because hurting the mage means having a big setback even before the war. He fears to trust Ash on the battlefield. But they are all stunned as the fire starts blazing out Lily's wound. Ash smirked as he learned about the secret gifts his team had been given. These abilities look like a joke to him, as they are opposite to their roles. He then asked Lily if she remembered being cut by a blade as a child. After goblins attacked her village, she developed the ability to fire her skin, which was formed by her intense fear of sharp weapons. This skill allowed her to turn her skin into flames, consuming mana with every physical attack it blocked. While in the game, he couldn't use this hidden ability. He pulls out the dagger, and it heals immediately. Our boy decides to use her ability to the fullest. He dares to clear every impossible level just to beat down the guy who brings him to this insane game. Ash then apologizes to her for the stabbing lesson. She feels good but asks how he knows all about her past. Ash brushes off her concern, stating it is unimportant. Then he shifts his attention towards Ken, and with a sinister look, he says that Ken was a thief in childhood to support his poor family. He even knows how Ken worked his ass off to become a knight, which makes Ken ask him how he is guessing their past entirely right. Ash also dismissed his concern by showing him the dagger, getting him to the point. He suggested Ken focus on his petty thief survival skills. This skill could mask any enemy but cost significant health points. Then he places his dagger on the table and goes to Damien, the most important team member. Damien has sharp eyesight, which is why he can't forget the disturbing sight of his friend's death. Damien tells him that he grew up with his friend since his orphanage, but now his friend has been killed by the spiders fighting instead of him. He begins to cry and, with a heavy heart, asks Ash why he wanted their lives to once again end tragically in the face of a never-ending battle. Our hero is left speechless when he complains about Ash's dumb battle tactics and asks if he can bring his friend Juan back to life. Ash tells him he could hate him all he wanted, but reminds him that Van had sacrificed himself to save him. Now he can't believe Damien is just going to sit there and wait for death, wasting the life his friend had died for. He urges him to fight back. He tells him to avenge Van and survive by taking down the spiders who killed him. That's how he can really get back at his lord, after all. Then, he asks Damien if he actually wants to destroy the enemy. After a moment of pause, the young boy finally agrees. But Ash isn't done yet. He pushes further and asks if he also develops some intentions to kill his lord. The kid lowers his head and lets his intrusive thoughts win as he admits, yeah, he does. Everyone is shocked by his answer, but our hero grins at the kid's blunt confession of wanting revenge for his friend. He promises right away that if they survive, he'll let Damien take his life when the time comes. Lucas tries to step in, calling it madness, but Ash stops him with a simple wave of his hand. He reminds Lucas that if the plan fails, they're all dead anyway. With a sly grin, he swears that he'll keep his word for the honor of the imperial family. He then tells the kid to follow his orders and wonders if he'll use that hatred as fuel for the fight. Somehow, it works. He's got them on board. He knows he's playing with fire, and knows he could easily become the target of that hate himself. Still, he apologizes for his stupid orders that cost so many lives, but adds with a smirk that if his plan works, they'll be the ones kicking spider ass this time. Even with the odds stacked against him, he asks them to trust him and just follow his orders this one time. When everyone in the room looks at him passionately, he feels like he's finally holding a winning hand. It's either going to be a big win or a complete disaster, but our hero has nothing to lose at this point. The next day, the guard beats the drum, sounding the alarm about the army of black spiders heading their way. As the huge swarm of giant spiders charges toward the fortress, Ash quickly breaks down his plan to the warriors. His team's job is to fight off the spiders, but the real goal is to find the queen controlling the swarm and blow her shitty head off with the mana cannon. They've removed the limiter to boost the cannon's power, but Ash still isn't sure if the damn queen can resist its blast. The tricky part is spotting her from a safe distance, which will require more than sharp eyes, so they need to stay alert. Suddenly, a bright light flashes as Ash activates his map creation skill. Confident in his ability, he knows they can find the Spider Queen with his mapping. He forms a massive wall of energy that spreads around the fortress, allowing his character's map creation skill to reveal the area like a minimap. Most of his stats are pretty terrible, but when he opens his stats window, the mapping skill feels like a real game changer. He dives right into looking for the queen, but she's nowhere to be found. Our boy is stunned because this could wreck his entire plan as the swarm of spiders gets closer. Ken enters the gates with a supply of red stamina potions given to him by Ash. These potions will help Ken create distractions while sneaking into the spider formations. Lily is shaking in the underground passage since Ash gave her a crucial task. If the spiders break through to the artillery unit, she has to use her blazing skin to block the entrance. She is scared and keeps telling herself she can handle this brutal sacrifice. At the same time, Lucas got the soldiers into an attack position. As he watches the vast army of spiders rushing toward the fortress, he tells his team to hold their ground because he knows they must give Ash enough time to find and kill the queen. He sees that his lord is ready and tells the soldiers to get ready to fire. But Ash is overwhelmed right now because he can't find the queen spider. Lucas orders the crossbows and cannons to fire, immediately blowing up a large group of spiders and disrupting their first attack. Our hero is highly stressed because things aren't going well. He pulls himself together and remembers that the main goal of this part of the game isn't just to kill the Spider Queen, so he need not worry about it. He figured that it would make sense if she wasn't showing up on the map because her signal would likely appear during a big attack. He's sure the queen is somewhere around a reserve site. Seeing a bunch of red marks coming their way, he shouts for Damien. Ash pointed toward the gap between the towering mountains and asked if he could spot spiders preparing to launch an attack. The kid notices a bunch of spiders gathered in a circle. Right away, Ash tells him to check to see if the queen is there. The kid spots a scary spider monster with a spider body and a human head. Our boy feels relieved because that's definitely the Spider Queen. He told the kid not to worry. The queen would soon get hit by the cannons and be done for. He tells them to point the cannon at the spiders and make sure the aim is spot on. The artillery team gets everything ready and waits for his go-ahead to fire. Ash tells the kid to aim for the Spider Queen, but the boy freezes up for a second and says he's never used a cannon before. Ash reassures him he'll take full responsibility, even if things go wrong. He urges the kid to just pull the trigger and leave the rest to him. This is his one shot at getting revenge for Van. Driven by revenge, Damien instantly activates his all-seeing eye ability. He pulls the lever, and the cannon blasts powerful bright mana everywhere. A strong stream of energy shoots from the cannon, rushing towards the monsters. The beam flies fast and even changes direction in the air. Ash yells with hope for the Spider Queen to be crushed. The energy blast explodes massively. A warrior watches closely and notes that the shot hits the spider right on target. The soldiers are overjoyed and hug the kid while asking if it's really his first time shooting. He admits he's just following orders, and once he pulls the trigger, his body moves on its own. Our hero celebrates too early when he notices the swarm of spiders still advancing toward the fortress. He wonders if the death of the Spider Queen hasn't fended off these monsters, as they are still crawling toward them. Ash grabs a telescope as a soldier shouts that another swarm of spiders is approaching. Through the lens, Ash spots a large crowd of spiders shielding the queen. The Spider Queen's haunting shrieks send chills down his spine. Her cries reach the spiders near the fortress walls, causing them to retreat. They're totally confused by what's happening because the spiders are retreating, and they can't figure out why their mana cannon had no effect on the Spider Queen. A soldier suddenly shouts that those wild creatures are charging toward the fort. Hence, they watch as the whole army of spiders moves in perfect unison. Ash realizes the queen is way smarter than an average insect. Next to the fortress, Ken is breathing heavily and feeling uneasy because he has only one stamina potion left. He's sitting behind a tree, hearing loud explosions and a swarm approaching nearby. He starts wondering if he should just run for it. But he decides to face them off, and the entire swarm goes somewhere else as he prepares for combat. Our knighty gets tired and falls to his knees. At the same time, Damien lands another shot and hits the Spider Queen directly. Ash looks at the spiders swarming near the wall and realizes they are still attacking. The Spider Queen isn't down yet, and he worries that their cannons haven't dealt enough damage. He thought the queen should have died until now with just a couple of cannon shots because it's weaker than normal spiders. He is pissed as there is no information about this freaky Spider Queen, so he fears what will happen to his army if he isn't able to kill her. He's completely lost, trying to figure out what to do next. One of the soldiers suddenly yells that the mana cannon is almost busted because the regulator was removed. Ash quickly asks how many shots they can fire. 3 more, the soldier replies. Now they've only got 3 shots to turn the fate of the battle, and our hero hopes it's enough to kill the queen. The real worry is that Damien's eyes are taking a hit from using his ability, so Ash wonders if the kid can still pull off 3 more shots and hit right at the target. Luckily, the central castle walls are holding firm. One soldier yells out that a demolisher spider is coming their way. It's a massive spider which oozes green liquid from its back. Our hero is shocked because no pumped-up monster like this ever happens in the game. He quickly orders everyone to focus their fire on the giant monster. Still, their attacks hardly slow it down as the huge spider charges straight at the fortress. With a loud crash, it smashes into the wall and breaks through. Smoke pours from its head as the monster collapses. Now, a flood of spiders is pouring through the hole it made. Lucas draws his sword and yells for everyone to charge and attack. Ash tells his cannon infantry that the soldiers on the ground will protect them, and that they must keep firing to kill the Spider Queen before the monsters reach their artillery. After loading another cannonball, he calls out to Damien. Despite the strain on his eyes from using his ability, the kid quickly pulls the lever. A loud explosion sounds in the distance, and a soldier says they hit the target, but the Spider Queen is still alive. Ash shouts for the next shot to be loaded right away. Meanwhile, Lucas fights tirelessly and unleashes powerful attacks that take down waves of spiders. He shouts to the soldiers that they must defend the artillery and protect the prince. From the tower, he watches in horror as the swarm of spiders overruns the battlefield, picking off his soldiers one by one with their sharp legs. The death toll rises, and he recalls how deaths were just numbers in the game. Now each death comes with screams and the smell of blood, making it terrifyingly real. He fears the situation is spiraling out of control. Looking at the artillery, he wonders if they have even 5 shots left and worries that the cannon might fail before it. On the other hand, Lucas and his soldiers are pushed back toward the wall while fighting the spiders. Our hero is perplexed as he can't think of a way out. Suddenly, Ken appears at the breach in the wall, yelling at the freaky spiders, and they all turn their attention to him. Ash is shocked to see him standing there, staring at death. Ken drinks his last stamina potion and shouts that he's a knight of the Empire, challenging the spiders. The spiders ditch the soldiers near Lucas and go after Ken, who sprints to a hiding spot behind a stone. He grins as dark energy starts covering his body like the stone hiding him. The system pops up and notifies him that he's using a survival ability meant for petty thieves. Ash sees the system window and shouts at Ken to stop since he doesn't have enough stamina to pull it off. In an instant, Ken is surrounded by vile spiders, and his ability fails to hide him. Regretting that he trusted Ash, the monsters brutally attack our knighty soldier. Blood splatters everywhere while Ash watches in horror. The system notifies him that he's lost another member of his army. He is horrified as he hears the sound of Ken's flesh being torn apart from a distance. He feels the weight of his orders and the loss of another life. The soldiers are fired up, determined not to waste Ken's sacrifice. They charge toward the breach, ready to knock the monster right past the defense line. But our boy is filled with dread, realizing every soldier out there is dying because of his decisions. It feels like he's the one who killed them all, and everything is spiraling out of control. He remembers how he used to always send NPCs as bait when he played the game. The whole game feels like it's built on bones. When the system asks if he wants to send another team as bait, he always agrees because someone has to be sacrificed to save someone, get an item, complete a quest, or unlock an achievement. Every time, he does it without a second thought. But now, the full weight of his actions hits him hard. He screams at the monsters to stop being overwhelmed by the painful truth that every death is on him. Just then, he spots a giant spider crawling toward him. His yells have drawn the monster's attention, and now they're going wild. Suddenly, a glowing sword slices through the spider in midair. Lucas uses his power to slaughter this creature and shouts at its corpse how it dares to target his prince. Lucas asks if his lord is right, who looks at the spider stuck on the tower, screeching in pain. He grabs his dagger and quickly cuts off its head, thinking the only way to stop these monsters is to kill them before they kill humans. Nearby, an infantry soldier by the overheated cannon yells that the 4th cannonball is ready. Ash turns to the kid and asks if he can still fire. With blood in his eyes, the kid wipes it away and shouts that he's good to go. Damien pulls the trigger, and the cannon blasts another powerful shot. The cannonball flies straight toward the Spider Queen, with spiders leaping into its path, only to be blown to pieces. The queen screams as the shot flies toward her, ending in a huge explosion. Ash watches as the 4th shot nails the Spider Queen right in the head, but somehow, this crazy monster is still alive. She lets out an ear-splitting scream, sending shockwaves to their tower. Every soldier on the tower is thrown into despair as their enemy seems inevitable. A soldier looks at his burned hands and warns the cannon will blow up if they fire again. He turns to Ash with worry and says they should just give up. It feels like all hope is gone. Our hero starts to wonder if this is really the end. He checks the cannon and sees it's on the verge of blowing. Glancing down, he notices their defense line has been breached. Their sniper can barely keep his eyes open. He silently hopes for any kind of miracle. Just then, a soldier scanning the battlefield with binoculars shouts that there's still a chance that the queen's skin is damaged, and she's shed it. They just need one more hit to finish her off. Suddenly, Ash spots a massive green slime speeding toward the tower. It slams into them with a violent explosion, destroying the tower they're standing on. As the tower collapses, Lucas shouts out, but Ash is falling with the debris. He feels like everything is lost as the world starts to fade. While he crashes, he hears Lucas calling his name and sees a blurry image of himself ahead. Suddenly, he gets pulled back to reality. Our hero finds himself on the ground with Lucas, protecting him from the falling rubble. He sees that Knight is badly hurt and quickly asks if he's okay. He weakly says he's fine, but Ash stays silent when he notices the heavy bleeding. He then asks if his lord remembers something from 20 years ago, but our hero has no idea since he only got into Ash's body a day ago. He goes on to remind Ash of when he first chose him as his guard. He said something important back then so that even if he couldn't become emperor, he would become the most remarkable man in the world. Ash urged him to become the greatest knight ever. He holds on to those words his entire life and stays loyal to his lord no matter what. Our hero is so caught up in the moment that he doesn't realize when Lucas collapses under a heavy stone slab from exhaustion. He quickly pulls him out and lays him on the ground, thinking Lucas can't die because he's the savior of this world. He looks around and tries to figure out how long he was unconscious. He sees Damien and the other gunners are still alive, though the cannon is badly damaged. Then it hits him. How are they still alive? Why haven't the spiders killed them yet? Suddenly he hears Lily's voice. She is on fire and badly wounded but still fighting off the spiders. In pain, she looks at him and tells him it's not over yet. He steps toward her, but Lily raises his hand to stop him. On the other hand, she holds a potion and says she can't hold out the assault of spiders much longer. She can block the passage, but the monsters will break through soon. Time is running out, so he has to act fast. With a serious look, she tells him not to let their deaths be wasted. Ash grits his teeth in frustration and turns to the soldiers, pushing them to get up and load the last shell. One soldier warns that the cannon will explode if they fire again, but he stays firm. Either way, they'll end up as the food for monsters, so pulling it is worth the risk. A gunner asks how they'll even aim since the tower is destroyed and rubble is everywhere. He says they'll hold the cannon by hand, and Damien will aim. He orders the soldiers to load the barrel. Walking over to the kid, he thinks he can't explain how the all-seeing eye ability works, but when this boy uses it, the projectile always hits its target. He tells Damien this is their last chance, so he has to shoot at the queen. The young boy barely sees anything and remarks that nothing will change if he pulls the trigger and even if kills the queen. His dead friend will never come back from this revenge. He feels sad that the world has taken everything from him, his only friend, and now even the last drop of his abilities. He's tired of living like this and wants to leave for Van. Ash cuts him off, yelling that he believes the world is pointless and that life stays miserable despite overcoming hardships. Grabbing the depressed kid angrily, he shouts to stop talking nonsense as this world is brutal and not like a game, and surviving this world is like playing on the hardest difficulty. He continues shouting that nothing goes as planned, and that giving up now would make him worthless. They have to fight until death claims them, and he'll keep fighting and coming up with strategies until his last breath. He draws his dagger and taunts Damien to finish it by cutting off his own head. He presses the blade to Damien's shoulder, startling him, and then tosses the dagger away. He tells him that if he's too scared to do that, he should pull the cannon's lever and stop chasing his dead friend. There's no need to search for a reason to live when he's the most important guy to his lord. Suddenly, a system message appears showing that Ash's passive skill Indomitable Commander is unlocked. His eyes light up with determination, and he orders Damien to pull the trigger and take down the Spider Queen. The kid agrees in front of his lord's strong, commanding presence and quickly stands up to pull the trigger. A soldier calls out that the last shell is loaded, but there's no way to cool the cannon barrel. Touching it might cause more than a first-degree skin burn. But our boy ignores the warning, saying he will hold the cannon himself because it's still better than becoming a lunch for monsters. He asks Damien if he's ready. The kid replies that he can't feel or see his hands, but Ash and the kid trust his all-seeing eye's ability to hit the target. Our hero grips the hot cannon with his bare hands and starts lifting it. Gritting his teeth and screaming in pain, he somehow manages to raise it. The soldiers stare in shock until one shouts that they need to help. They rush over and start lifting it with him. Suddenly, the unconscious Demolisher spider wakes up and charges at them. Damien, gritting his teeth in pain, quickly pulls the lever using his skill. The cannon surges with bright, powerful energy, launching a projectile surrounded by a massive mana wave blowing away the shot blasts out of the tower's ruins, soaring over the horde of spiders rushing toward them. Right after the shot, everyone drops the cannon to the ground, overwhelmed as the swarm of spiders keeps coming. Ash collapses, thinking about the impossibility of hitting an enemy hidden beneath a collapsed fortress. But despite the odds, he's confident the projectile is locked onto the Spider Queen, unaffected by distance, obstacles, or the swarm of monsters in its path. The projectile flies toward the Spider Queen, and she lets out an enraged scream as it hits her head and ultimately destroys it. Suddenly, Ash remembers a moment when he was streaming and was speechless, caught off guard by a fan's admiration. When he wakes up in pain, he isn't sure if he's even alive. Every slight movement makes the pain worse, and he notices his body is wrapped in bandages. Lily tells him to rest and explains that Damien healed him with magic, but the burns are severe. Ash is surprised to see her looking well despite being savagely stabbed by spiders. She explains that he woke up after 4 days, and she was afraid he wouldn't wake up again because he was severely hurt after taking down the Spider Queen and fighting off their entire spider army. She explains how the soldiers cleared the rubble, carried the fallen, and burned the spider corpses. As Ash looks out the window, she warns him that his body is severely burned, and that even after healing at Crossroad, his scars will be permanent. He looks at his bandaged hand and says it's a small price to pay for survival. Then he asks how she survived. He's shocked to see her in a wheelchair, and she explains that spiders attacked her back when she ran out of mana. Luckily, the Spider Queen died soon after, saving her, but she'll never walk again because of nerve damage. Still, she smiles and says she's grateful to be alive. She adds that only 9 people, including 5 artillerymen, Lucas and Damien, survived the battle. He hides his face in despair, thinking about the hundreds who died, and he wonders if he could have done something different if there was a better way to save more lives. She gently places her hand on his arm and comforts him, telling him he's not powerful enough to save everyone and that he did everything he could. Ash feels the weight of guilt and blames himself for the battle and the losses because he led the charge. She reassures him that no one could have predicted the monster attack after 10 years and that no one could stop them, so he shouldn't blame himself. Ash listens and stares sadly at the floor. Suddenly, Lucas bursts in with tears and exclaims how relieved he is that his lord is awake. He asks if Ash is in pain and offers to call Damien. Lily is surprised by Lucas's emotional reaction. Still, Ash tells him he's fine and asks how Lucas can walk after everything. Despite his injuries, Lucas smiles and says his strength is his toughness. Ash remembers Lucas is the strongest knight at the SSR level. Lucas hands over a long list of battle casualties. He mentions that not all bodies were recovered, and the corpses were deployed in the northern plains. Ash insists on seeing his men who fought and died for him. Lucas and Lily worry about his injuries, but he insists on Lucas helping him walk. He lets his lord piggyback, and as they walk, Ash jokingly asks him if he wants to be his favorite horse. Lucas readily agrees without hesitation. Our boy laughs and tells him it was just a joke, and he needs to stop taking everything so seriously. They notice Damien standing nearby. Ash calls him over and asks about his eyes. The young boy is happy to see him and says his vision is slowly coming back. Ash recalls how he cared for the wounded soldiers alone, using healing magic to treat them across the battlefield despite being unable to see. He thanks the kid for helping them achieve victory and offers to give him immense wealth so he'll never have to worry about his future or fight again. As a mercenary, he lets Damien choose his own path. The young boy reminds Ash that he once called him his trigger and says he wants to find out why those vile monsters appear and attack them, and why they killed his friend Van. He asks if he can keep following Ash as his lord. Lucas and Ash both smile at his decision. Ash says his job starts now because they need a priest to honor the fallen soldiers. Sometime later, Ash and the remaining soldiers stand before a large blue flame, surrounded by the bodies of fallen comrades. As he looks on, Ash realizes there is no better strategy he could have chosen. There's no point thinking about the past. He made his choice and got the outcome, and now he has to own the damage and keep going. He instructs Lucas to move the bodies after the funeral and bury them in a vacant lot south of Crossroad. He realizes the world values funerals more than life itself, so he shares his plans to build a cemetery there, like the one in the game, to honor those who gave their lives in the war. Lucas bows and agrees to follow him. Ash thinks it's not just for the people who died now, but also for all those he killed without thinking when he played the game. He pictures himself standing there in real life, seeing this as his redemption. He tells Lucas he won't let himself fail or make mistakes again, and his frustration clears as he clenches his teeth. Ash turns around and says they're heading back to their main base, Crossroad. The system then tells him the prologue is done, and he gets a reward in his inventory. Our boy has been heading north toward the fortress, leaving base 3 days ago for fortress headquarters. The boredom's really starting to get to him with nothing to do on this long trip. He keeps asking Lucas for updates, but Lucas just repeats like a broken record that they're almost there. Suddenly, a system window pops up telling him he can pick a class now that he's hit level 5. He notices his stats are as lowly as they were before, and can't help but wonder what kind of messed up character he's got. Even though his stats are off, he can pick any class he wants. But one skill stands out that he's never seen before, a beginner commander. Ash remembers the last time he got that passive skill, Indomitable Commander. Now it feels like the game is pushing him to take the commander class. This skill boosts morale and makes anyone in a 10-meter radius immune to mental debuffs, which sounds cool, but he knows it's not that useful early in the game since those debuffs come in later. He is unsure of what to do. Choosing a class he knows nothing about seems like a huge gamble. He sighs, wondering if he should roll the dice on Commander or stick to something safe and familiar. It feels like the game is pushing him toward a path he's not sure about. Just then, Lucas shouts that Crossroad is in sight. He leans out of the window excitedly and spots the city surrounded by a huge fence. It used to be the Empire's biggest fortress, built to defend against monsters from the Dark Lake down south. But after the invasion slowed down, the army was sent off to other places, leaving the fortress in the hands of mercenaries and old vets. Now, most of them have been swapped out for rookies since the Empire needs soldiers, no matter their skill or where they're from. As the fortress filled up with desperate people, businesses like restaurants, banks, and hotels started popping up. Over the next 10 years, it turned into a huge city. People started calling it Suicide Road, or City on a Grave, mocking the mercenaries who came chasing money but ended up dying like moths to a flame. Ash sits quietly, thinking of Crossroad as humanity's last line of defense. During the game, he barely noticed how large and run down the city was. Still, he wonders if he should really take on the role of its lord, because the silent faces of its residents seem indifferent. Seeing their sad expressions, he turns away, knowing it's normal for them to mourn the potential new lord who just barely survived a crushing defeat. A smile spreads across his face because he expected this and was ready for it. People start to notice the cart's contents, asking if the stuff inside are magic crystals. Our boy left them out in the open on purpose, just to be clever. These 400 high-purity crystals, taken from black fighters, are worth a fortune, more than enough to secure the future of the city's citizens. He knows winning the trust of the townspeople is key to success in the game. Even if they doubt him now, our boy is confident he can turn their hate into love with a little money. The carriage stops and Lucas opens the door. As our boy steps out, he's blown away by Lord Crossroad's huge mansion. He can't believe he might actually live in what feels like his dream house. Just then, a young man with glasses rushes out, clearly relieved to see our hero alive. He even apologizes for not calling him Your Highness. He grabs Ash's hand, confessing he was worried for his safety. In the game, this guy, Eider, handles the city's affairs, and Ash realizes they'll be running the city together. Eider welcomes him home, mentioning that a warm bath and dinner are ready. Still processing everything, he thinks of the soldiers and tells Lucas to make sure they get some rest. Lucas nods and agrees right away. He also mentions he needs to rest tonight, but Lucas, looking worried, insists on staying to protect him. He waves it off, saying nothing will happen overnight and they'll pick up things where they left off tomorrow. Lucas reluctantly agrees and walks off, his face clearly showing his sadness. Eider tells Ash to follow him, leading the way to a warm bath that's ready to wash off all the dirt and exhaustion from battle. Ash feels a wave of relief, realizing it's been forever since he had a decent bath. He thanks Eider and starts undressing, ready for some much-needed rest. Suddenly, Eider gives him a sly grin and calls him a classic gamer geek. Ash freezes for a moment. He is shocked to hear that nickname from his old gaming days. Eider shuts the door behind him, saying he's impressed the streamer made it through the tutorial. Our boy is enraged, but is also confused to figure out who this guy really is. With a cheerful smile, Eider casually drops the bomb that he's the game's director. Fueled by anger of how much he suffered because of him, our hero throws a punch that sends Eider flying across the room, crying out in pain. He can't believe such a fool could actually drag him into this insane game. Eider bows down to his knees, apologizing for dragging Ash into the mess. He insisted that this world needs him, but Ash isn't having it and winds up for another punch. After Eider gets beaten up badly, he starts crying and begs Ash to forgive him. The cruel lord says he'll forgive him and asks if he's the game's director who texted him. The swollen boy readily reassured him. The streamer then wants to know why he brought him here. The director explains that this world has an ending that nobody has ever gotten to. He's restarted it countless times but has never managed to get the ending he wants. He snaps his fingers, and suddenly a big system window pops up. He explains that he turned this world into a game and showed it to players from other worlds, hoping they'd see things he hadn't thought of. But still, no one ever reached the true ending. Hearing this for the first time, our hero asks what the true ending is like. Eider says he never got there himself, but he did something no one else could. Ash remembers he's the only one who ever beat Iron Man Hell difficulty and wonders if that's why he's here, to win the real ending. The director agrees and says he thinks Ash has the best shot at beating it, which is why he escorted him here. Ash snaps back, saying it wasn't just an escort because he was not only kidnapped, but thrown into a cursed tutorial in the body of this spoiled rich kid. Eider awkwardly admits it was a mistake, some kind of weird glitch. Then, to stop him from beating, Eider quickly mentions the reward he will get if he clears the game. Our hero just stares at him in disbelief. The director claims he's almost like a god in this world, and can grant him any wish he wants when he gets back to his own world. The streamer asks if he wants $10 million, and Eider offers him $100 million, or even more if he wants. Our hero is skeptical because such a bold claim can be an empty promise. However, he's still curious about the wish, because there's one thing he's always wanted. Eider senses his desire and asks if it's a long-lost dream, something more valuable than money. At this moment, our hero realizes that the dude knows everything about him. So he admits he never fulfilled desire, and now he's lost hope. Eider tells him that as long as he holds on to that dream, he can still achieve it. Our hero asks why he can't save the world himself if he's so powerful. The director explains though he is quite powerful, but his abilities are limited in this world, so he needs someone else to act for him. He then asks what happens if he dies. The director bluntly says everything ends. That's some bad news for our hero, who's starting to feel like just another NPC. Eider tells him everyone only gets one life, like playing in Iron Man mode with no do-overs. Ash gets it since the game has always been tough on death. Suddenly, the director offers him a way back to Earth. Ash is caught off guard and can't believe it. He smiles and admits he wanted to ask earlier but got distracted. The director offers him two choices: pursue his true ending and fulfill his deepest desire, or go back to his quiet old life. At first, Ash considers going home, but two things hold him back. One is his wish, and second is knowledge of this game. He beat it on impossible difficulty and knows every corner of it. He pauses, weighing the risks. After thinking about everything, Ash decides he's going to finish this game once and for all. The director asks excitedly if he's serious. Ash says he is, and promises to give it his all, but expects the director's full support and his wish when he gets to the true ending. The director excitedly exclaims that he can use him like his loyal dog. So, our hero tells Eider to sell all the black spider magic crystals by morning. Eider hesitates and says the market's closed. With a cold glare, Ash tells him to shut up and get it done. No excuses. The scared director doesn't dare argue, but nervously asks what Ash plans to do with the 388 black spider crystals, since they'll bring in a lot of money. He just chuckles, dropping a hint about there being an open spot on his team. Later, as he heads to the mercenary guild, he's thinking it's time to play the gacha game. This game is like a vending machine where one can spend money to get a new character, and Ash is determined to get one, even if it takes 100 tries. With all the cash he's got, he doesn't care. The villa was surrounded by several carts loaded with gold as Eider sat nearby, completely exhausted after selling all the crystals fast. Meanwhile, Ash and Lucas made their way to the mercenary guild. Ash couldn't help but notice the bustling activity, while Lucas offered to go in first. Ignoring Lucas, Ash kicked open the door and greeted everyone loudly. The whole room fell silent, and a bald guy shouted at him, asking if he had lost his mind. Ash fires back, calling the guy a filthy dog for daring to speak in front of his lord. Grabbing the bald guy's head, Ash makes him tremble by telling him that it's actually him who is rushing to die. As Ash and Lucas stroll down the hall, they overhear people whispering about him being the third prince who took down his own unit and defeated all the spiders at the front line. Ash scans the crowd, hoping to spot some interesting faces. He's on the lookout for the best recruits, and he knows the Mercenary Guild is the place to find them. He's only interested in the top-tier ones, ranked from normal to super rare. He notices an older woman with a purple glow sitting and smoking a cigar. She warmly greets him and starts talking about the Mercenary Guild. Ash wonders if she might be a super rare type. He sits down next to her and asks for her name. She says her name is Jupiter. He's surprised to learn that she's an SR-ranked lightning caster and is amazed to find someone like her in the Mercenary Guild. He mentions her unusual uniform and explains that it's from the Everblack Empire, but the style is decades old. When he asks if she served the Empire, she tells him she did for 30 years. After leading the 2nd Caster Squadron, she retired and now works as a mercenary to earn money. Ash tells her this means he is in the right place to buy mercenaries. She then questions whether he is simply looking to buy meat shields who are willing to die for him. Lucas was just about to school her for her thoughtless comments, but Ash intervened. The older woman stayed cool as she brought up how the rumors about the battle on the front line had spread far and wide, and that Lord Ash had suffered a lot for his foolish decisions during the war. Even though they were mercenaries motivated by money, she argued that they shouldn't be seen as fools who are digging their own graves. Ash turned to face the group, challenging them. He wondered if they weren't truly selling their lives for a handful of coins, or if he was mistaken. But now, it seemed they were suddenly afraid to put a price on their lives. He then shifts his focus to the older woman, implying that her position seems more like self-deception. After all, she was dismissed for risking her career by stealing military funds. He stuns the older woman by revealing his knowledge of her entire history. He questions whether she wasn't essentially digging her grave herself back. Yet, she continues to proudly sport her military uniform. Ash accused her of being shameless and corrupt, but acknowledged her unmatched abilities as a fighter. He described her as less of a soldier and more of a legendary lightning mage known as Jupiter. The old mage appeared unaffected the Lord's words, and stated that despite her downfall, she still carried the pride of an imperial soldier. She cautioned him to choose his words carefully. Before she could even finish, Ash interrupted her and got straight to the point. He asked how much it would cost for her to fight for him, questioning the price of her so-called pride. She looked at him in silence. After a moment, she said it wouldn't come cheap. She demanded at least 100,000 ardals a year. Ash surprised her by offering 200,000, doubling her price. The boldness of the Mad Emperor stunned her. As the Prince of the Empire and Lord of the City, Ash didn't mind paying a high price for a mercenary. He flashes his card and declares he'll buy their fear of death and double their annual pay. He says that anyone who is afraid can leave. However, if someone wants to become richer, they should meet him at the western wasteland of Crossroad that evening. After leaving the guild, he heads straight to the church. Inside, a woman uses healing magic to fix his burns but tells him the scar is there to stay. He thanks her, calling her Lady Saintess, and that's when he realizes that she is the hidden R-rank heroine Saint Margaret, the best healer who can be recruited later once certain conditions are met. He puts something in a small column and tells her about his request. She quickly mentions she brought all the town's priests with her. Ash sees Damien and thinks he's really taken to his role as a priest. With that thought, he gets ready to head to the cemetery. That night, Ash and Lucas stand in a cemetery at Crossroad West, surrounded by a big crowd. He watches as soldiers bury the fallen. He watches the Empire flags covering the coffins while a choir sings. He wonders if it's a city where death is common and proper funerals are rare. He decides not to sugarcoat anything in his speech because this is a serious show. On the front line, they've got to see this battle as a sacred mission to save humanity. Ash steps up to the stage, introducing himself as the third prince and the newly appointed lord, Ash, the born hater Everblack. The people already don't have the best opinion of him. To them, he's just the crazy prince who comes off like a total fool. He tells the crowd straight up that they're all going to die in this war. He looks at Jupiter and doesn't hold back, saying that new tombstones will keep appearing in the cemetery every week, each one marked by a choir. He tells the hard truth that it costs more for them to die than for them to stay alive. He even talks about the money he earns from magic crystals and how half of it goes to paying for their funerals and compensation. So, he makes it clear that he will do everything he can to keep them alive and fighting on the front lines. He wants them to survive, to get as much out of him as they can, and to avoid making him pay for their funerals. As the rifles fire into the sky, Ash ends his speech. He's wondering if the townspeople see it as just another excuse from a failed commander who is wasting the Lord's money. But he really doesn't care. What matters is proving himself through action, showing them that he's the one who can actually save them. If he's leading the charge on the front lines, the world won't fall into chaos. He smirks and says it's time to clear the first level. The system window in front of him shows 3 days and 1 hour before the Stage 1 challenge begins. After the funeral, Ash and Lucas find themselves in the backyard of the Crossroad estate. A system window pops up, asking Lord Ash if he wants to activate the teleportation gate. He agrees, and the stones start floating up, forming a portal. He explains the whole thing to Lucas, who's totally shocked by what's happening. It's the gateway to the dungeon under the lake, and it leads straight to the enemy's base. This game is a mix of tower defense and dungeon offense. When monsters attack crossroad fortresses, towers must be used to defend them. Dungeon offense occurs when humans venture deep inside lake dungeons to search for monster lairs. Our hero realizes this dungeon has opened even before the first stage difficulty kicks in. He knows it's a tough game, but it still feels fair. At the beginning of the game, he was almost near death, but now everything's going quite fine. With his sniper Damien, electric mage Jupiter, and a stack of cash, our hero feels confident enough to try out some bold strategies. He explains the game rules to Lucas, mentioning that they'll be scouting the enemy base for the next level. Lucas quickly says he's ready, which surprises him. Actually, the real Lord Ash would never have come up with any plans, nor does he know anything about the dungeon or how it works. Our boy expects him to ask some questions, but Lucas just goes along with it. He wonders why Lucas isn't even a little skeptical. He asks if Lucas has any questions. Lucas stares for a moment, then says he has no questions and just loves obeying His Highness. The boy is a little surprised as it's hard to believe Lucas doesn't have any doubts. He makes a mental note to reward his loyal wingman with a big bonus. Anyway, he walks up to the portal and asks if Lucas is ready to dive into the abyss. Lucas replies that he's ready whenever his lord gives the word. With a quick selection of lake as the destination, they were teleported instantly, and the portal disappeared behind them. A system window popped up, reminding them that heroes get stronger with better gear, which could be found in dungeons or crafted at the forge. Feeling a mix of annoyance and amusement, our boy couldn't help but notice the game's sudden attempt to be nice after completely kicking their butts at the start. They reach a creepy, dark lake. Ash looks around and thinks that this eerie lake might be the source of the monsters, a total nightmare. This dungeon also blocks off the southern part of the world. Suddenly Lucas sees something weird and yells for his lord to check it out. Small bubbles start coming up from the lake, and out of nowhere, the water splits in two, making a long passage. Ghostly arms in armor start rising from the ground. In no time, an entire army of these armored figures crawls out with weapons in hand. The gamer is frozen in place, his mind racing with questions. Are these the freaking living armor? Why did these overpowered creatures show up way before they're supposed to? Dealing with goblins, mermaids, or wyverns is one thing, but these terrifying monsters are on a whole other level. He can't believe his awful luck. His knightly boy draws his sword and asks if these are the metal spirits they're supposed to destroy. His lord is totally freaking out and checks a system update that displays the enemy's stats. There are like thousands of them, and one of them has its level and status completely hidden. Lucas asks why he looks so worried when he sees his lord frozen. He clenches his teeth and tells Lucas that they're facing a huge problem with an overwhelming enemy force. Our guy thinks that he has restarted this game 741 times already, each time for a different reason. But as soon as he sees the first level monsters, like living armor, he simply starts over without a second thought. These monsters are like walking suits of armor with a soul at the core, which makes them immune to any physical attacks. Later in the game, they're easier to handle once you've got the right gear. But for now, he's got nothing to fight these freaks with. As Ash struggles to finish the game, he feels like something is intentionally getting in his way. As the monsters crawl from the lake onto the shore, he knows they still have 3 days before they will left with no option but to face these monsters. So he tells Lucas to retreat. The portal closes just in time before the living corpses can reach them. As our hero leaves, he's determined to do whatever it takes to prepare for the upcoming battle. Once back home, he immediately calls for Eider. When Eider shows up, he asks about the city's troop situation. Eider reports that they've only managed to gather 526 men to defend the fortress. In the midst of the chaotic situation, our hero can't believe that after all the hard work, they only have 500 soldiers left. Eider reveals that most of their warriors, including those from their own fortress, perished during the tutorial. The gamer is furious at Ash's reckless actions, who led so many men to their doom. Eider adds that all the city's mercenaries have been enlisted, and there are no more available for hire, at least not in this city. So our boy orders him to send people to the nearest city for reinforcements, offering twice the usual pay. He also instructs him to send a delegation to the imperial capital, informing them that the monsters have started attacking, and they need full support. Eider hesitates as he scribbles it down and then questions if our hero is really sure about reaching out to the imperial capital. He understands that asking for their help could lead to a huge disaster later on, but he believes it's the only way to survive. Despite all his doubts, he still decides to go for it anyway. He tells all the carpenters, masons, blacksmiths, and alchemists in the city to come in, even though it might seem smarter to draft them into the army. Eider's excuse is that this will stop magic crystal production. Ash gets mad and fires back, saying no one will need mana stones if the city's wiped out. Eider gets the point and leaves right away. Feeling overwhelmed by the growing problems, the gamer decides to unlock more options to strengthen his forces. So there's this system window that pops up, and it's asking if he's cool with accepting the skill Beginner Level Commander. He's not sure, but he decides to go for it. Then the system gives him a congrats for unlocking the skill. Out of curiosity, he tries to check out its effects by pressing against his chest. All of a sudden, he feels intense pain and starts sweating as weird changes start happening. Then, a system window shows up, revealing a 50% debuff to his growth stats and equipment ownership. As he looks at the pop-ups, he grows furious and grips the system window as he demands answers. How could this class come with such crippling debuffs? He seized a poker in a fit of frustration, ready to confront Eider for creating such a flawed system. But just as he was about to storm off, more system windows popped up, revealing new abilities like Totem of Attack, Defense, Super Buffer, Main Order, and access to the group synergy system. He takes a moment to look through the windows and realizes that he can now give his allies extra buffs just by being on the battlefield, which will boost their attack and defense. It all makes sense now why the debuffs were there in the first place. Another system window pops up, showing that the commander class gives bonuses based on the classes of his party members. He grins, thinking this class could be awesome since he's used to managing things from the sidelines. The next day, he's sitting there staring at the Union presidents as they're brought in front of him. He asks Eider what went down. Eider explains that they ignored his orders, so he had to use a bit of force to bring them in. Our boy muttered that he could see their point, but this was basically kidnapping, and it would make them really angry. He's proven right when the Union presidents start pushing back at Ash and demand to know why they have pulled away from processing magic crystals. They even complained that Ash didn't consider whether it was the right time to take this step. Our hero wonders if he should apologize in front of them for making them angry. However, the cruel Ash character kicks in as our boy masks it perfectly and gives them a menacing glare. He asks if they want to die. As Prince and Lord, he reminds them they must answer his call without excuses. Otherwise, he already has bloody hands. As the presidents looked at him with pity and apologized, explaining it was their first time serving a lord from the imperial family, Ash saw an opportunity. He struck a deal, offering the Union presidents 20% of the crystals received by the army at the original price. In return, they must prioritize military equipment production when ordered. This solidified Ash's position and set the stage for a strategic partnership. He's got their attention, and it's the best deal he can offer for now, even if some might think it's a waste of money. The presidents eagerly agreed and asked when they could start. Ash knows there's nothing more valuable than money in this world. As his plan starts falling into place, the countdown shows 2 days and 13 hours until Stage 1 difficulty begins. Later, Ash urgently warns the group about the imminent threat posed by the 1,000 living armor that will arrive in just 2 days. At this moment, our boy realizes that his team is only now beginning to grasp the full gravity of the situation, as all of them are silent and clueless. As tension mounts, Lucas turns to our hero and demands to know the plan. Without a moment's hesitation, our hero confidently declares that the plan is to unleash everything they've got against the enemy. It's time to allocate tasks and prepare for the impending battle. He picks Lucas to lead the troops and motivate the lazy soldiers, and Lucas gladly takes on the challenge. Before he turns to Lily, she asks to check out her disability so she doesn't want to fight. But our boy interrupts her by apologizing as she is a crucial mage of his team, which could be left off, and telling her she won't be on the front line. He tells her to lead the restoration of the defense artifacts of the tower as a supervisor. She nods, getting the task. But he feels like saying sorry for not letting her retire because he knows she'll have to keep working for the city as a civil servant for now. Jupiter is really eager to know if she'll get a raise if she does a good job. Our buddy is wondering how money-hungry Granny is, but he reassures her that her pay will go up based on how well she performs. Jupiter smirks and tells him to get ready for her promotion. As the commander of a special forces unit, she's confident that no one does the job better than her. Next, it's Damien's turn. Eider hands him a crossbow that Ash specially prepared for his team's sniper. It is a level 10 crossbow, which comes with quite a handy durability. The kid also excitedly accepts his role as the long-range sniper on the battlefield. Ash sees Damien standing awkwardly without glasses. Damien says his vision is too sharp, so he wears glasses to reduce it. But now he's decided to stop wearing them because he wants a clear view. Eider feels a sense of relief because this kid won't look like him anymore. But then he goes quiet when Ash tells him to be quiet. After the meeting, our hero goes to the south wall of Crossroad to check on the progress of the castle wall. The president of the Blacksmiths Union informs him that the walls are in bad condition, likely having been neglected for a while. Ash asks Eider if the fortress isn't the only thing known for its defense, and why they ignore the wall repair. Eider tells Ash that the decrease in monster attacks on the fortress and the lower production of magic crystals led the previous lord to reduce the budget. Ash couldn't help but find irony in the fortress's weakening from neglect, despite being built to defend against monsters. He urged everyone to rally together and use all available resources to brace the wall, stressing the situation's urgency. After the president and his team agreed, he quickly sent them away, stressing that they needed to act fast because the monsters wouldn't wait for them. Later, he talks to the workers at the carpenter's workshop, saying they already know what's going on. He tells them they'll be focusing on building a wall for the next 3 days. The president is surprised and asks what he means. Ash explains that he needs a tall fence to block the path of enemies. The president says the living armor could easily break through a wooden wall and is not sure it will work. He says the wall doesn't have to last forever as it just needs to be a temporary barrier. He's really stressing that the wall needs to be super high and strong. Then he cuts off any more questions and tells everyone to stop talking and start working. Everyone was busy with their tasks in the next couple of days, and time flew by quickly. Suddenly, the system alerted him that there were only 30 minutes left before the first level began. A soldier silently scans the forest with binoculars. Out of nowhere, he sees an army of living armor emerging from behind the trees and heading towards the city. They quickly alert everyone with a drum beat, signaling the advancing enemies. The monsters seem pretty damn armed and slowly approach the town. With a calm demeanor, Ash reassures everyone not to be afraid. He confidently declares that the approaching horde is just a disorganized mob attempting to outnumber them. However, deep down, he knows the truth because these are the most savage monsters he could encounter at the beginning of the game. He keeps saying they're the toughest army in the Southern Empire, but he knows it's not true. They're just a bunch of old soldiers and newbies. He says their defense is great, and their gear is top of the line, but deep down, he knows no amount of lies or money will make them truly prepared. He keeps telling them not to worry and insists they can take down the monsters, but he knows he's just pretending. He tells them they'll win if they follow his orders, but he's the only one scared inside. Ash stares at the huge storm cloud filled with lightning hanging over the army of living armor as they march toward the city. He silently wishes Jupiter good luck in his head, knowing that their mission's success depends entirely on her. Meanwhile, Jupiter is standing in the forest with her group of young mercenaries, calming the nervous recruits. With a solid and steady voice, she assures them that this is their moment to shine. Jupiter and her squad charge on horseback ahead of the army of living armor. Our boy knows that all these monsters share one goal, which is the destruction of humanity. Without obstacles, they'll take the quickest path to kill. That's why he smartly draws them to chase his mercenaries. As they pass the designated spot, the ground suddenly gives way beneath the monsters, sending them tumbling into the pit. Ash's trap works, though the ditch isn't as deep as he wanted. Still, it'll be enough to slow them down. He tells her to act fast and zap the monsters. Right away, Jupiter forms a ball of lightning in her hand. She uses her first skill, Silicon Bleaching Zone, and hurls a solid ball of lightning into a big group of monsters. With this magic move, she deals serious damage to a lot of monsters. The monsters that survive this attack begin to rise slowly again. She gets furious and tells these freaks that she has known their strength for a long time. She gets ready to cook another meal for them and waves her hand, shooting out powerful lightning. Then, she uses her second skill again. A bright yellow lightning bolt comes down from the sky and hits the monsters. Ash figured out she marked monsters with her first skill and destroyed them with the second. He thinks Jupiter is doing an excellent job. The system shows that the number of killed monsters suddenly jumps to 56. But still, around 1,000 of them are heading towards the city, smashing fallen armor beneath their feet. A huge crowd of monsters keeps falling into the moat and climbing out on the other side. He tells everyone to back off. When he looks back at the city, Jupiter also tells everyone to retreat. She and her crew quickly ride away on horseback, being chased by a bunch of living skeletons. One rider glances back and sees the horde almost catching up. Ash starts getting worried as things are about to go beyond his plan. Jupiter tells the squad to head for the city's walls, and together, they leap toward the giant wooden walls at the city's entrance. Ash feels relieved they haven't been caught yet and praises Jupiter for her leadership. He welcomes the freaks to his giant barriers. He wonders if they'll attempt to avoid or destroy these walls, but he knows their choice is clear. They aim to kill the nearest human without considering the odds. He watches as the monsters are channeled through narrow corridors made by the walls, just like he planned. They're not just blocked. Basically, they're trapped even when it comes to moving forward. Ash throws up his hand, telling the soldiers to get ready to shoot. He sees the monsters getting closer together, which makes it harder for them to move around. Standing at the edge of the wall, he orders the soldiers to shoot without hesitation. Cannons fire and shells rain down on the crowd of monsters for several seconds. Explosions tear through their positions and scatter them in all directions. He grins, knowing this is how to dominate the battlefield with total chaos and destruction. Next to him, Damien asks if all this shooting will stop the monsters. He responds, saying that the living armor is glowing with energy under their helmets and raising shields to defend against the continuous bombardment. However, their attack still isn't enough to fend off those damn monsters. So he's got a couple of surprises lined up for these metal spirits. He tells Lily to roll up, and she quickly activates the gravity field artifact. The artifact lights up as two wizards channel its energy. A powerful dome forms around the armored monsters, slowing them down as gravity takes down on them. Lord Ash grins and calls out to Lucas. The knight tells the ballistas to prepare and instructs the soldiers to aim at the monsters' chests and shoot. The giant arrows pierce the living armor's shields, breaking their defenses and tearing apart their bodies. Ash watches with satisfaction as the crossfire wipes out the forefront living armor, the gravity field and ballistas working perfectly together. A soldier comes sprinting, shouting that a horde of monsters is breaching the walls. He's stunned to see living armor sneaking past the defenses. He never expected so many of them. He quickly tells Jupiter to take care of the monsters on the right. She grins, gives him a thumbs up, and dashes off with her team, saying the real fight is about to begin. As monsters come charging at her, she zaps them with a massive lightning bolt. Ash watches, feeling pretty confident that she's got everything under control. So now he has to deal with the monsters coming through the left side of the wall. He tells Damien to handle it. The young boy gets his crossbow ready and uses his unique all-seeing eye ability. He shoots an energy-infused arrow at a monster, hitting its helmet and making it collapse violently. The soldiers around him are astonished because the kid is spotting the soul in the heads of armor. Ash is also surprised by a skill that has been upgraded to perfection. Looking over the battlefield, he notes that the center remains a death zone. Jupiter holds the right side, and Damien controls the left. He glances at the system counter, which tracks the number of defeated monsters, and sees it approaching 500. Everything worked in favor of our boy. But then something weird happens. When he reaches a kill count of 500, the number turns red and the spirits of the defeated monsters gather to form the face of a creepy, smiling figure. Our boy nearly pissed his pant to see the monster stats above his head. The system identifies it as a level 25 Spirit Knight, the boss of the living armor. He is shocked, thinking this isn't supposed to happen yet. The appearance of the Ghost Knight, the power behind the Legion threatening ominously above the battlefield, always signals a significant shift in the battle. He remembers the power of the Ghost Army, and that the boss monsters appear in Phase 2 only after defeating the Armor Army. Now, the waxing part is, are not all the ghosts gone, and is the boss still here already? The Spirit Knight doesn't launch any area debuffs or powerful attacks. Still, it just floats above their heads to basically terrify them. When the soldiers see the Ghost Knight, they start to panic. Unlike in Human Wars, they lose their composure. Even the horses react, one kicking out in fear and throwing Jupiter off. The Ghost Knight's presence is so terrifying that it disrupts the entire battlefield. Jupiter tries to stay on her horse but loses control and falls hard to the ground. She gets hit on her head. The living armor she was fighting takes advantage of the moment and rushes toward her. She is bleeding from her head and immediately falls unconscious. Now Ash watches the enemies thrusting upon her, giving out boy chills. Thanks to her team, who quickly get off their horses and form a protective line to shield the sorcerer, Ash starts to sweat as his most important mage in this battle is in danger. Lucas suggests redirecting cannon fire to support her team, but our hero refuses, knowing that leaving the death zone would only allow more monsters to escape. Their soldiers freaked out because the looming boss monster messed up their attacking position. He tells Lucas to focus on getting the firepower back because the soldiers have lost their beat. He silently says sorry to Jupiter and asks her to hold on a bit longer. Jupiter suddenly becomes conscious, and as she touches the blood on her head, she feels annoyed at being hurt. One of her buddies rushes over to ask if she's okay, practically begging for her help. She looks around and sees her squad still fighting the monsters, and even though she's in pain, she knows she can't just sit there. She barely watches as the soldier assures her that the rescue squad is on its way. Still, the living armor charges him before he can finish speaking. The soldier swings his mace and smashes the monster's helmet, but it doesn't fall off. He's surprised that the monster can withstand his full strength. Jupiter notices something and yells for the soldier to turn around, but it's too late. The soldier is stabbed from behind by a spear. He's shocked because he thought the monsters behind him were already dead. When he turns around, he sees a living half-body monster holding a spear. Before he can react, more monsters attack and kill him. The savage stabbing angers her, and she tries to cast a spell, but she feels like something is wrong with her mana control. Another squad member gets snatched up by the monsters and stabbed without mercy. One of the soldiers loses it and starts to run, but then a spear from the living armor, the one missing an arm, nails him from behind. Just like that, her squad's defense crumbles in seconds. She can smell the rust and rot coming off the living armor surrounding her, but she channels lightning into her hand and blasts the monsters to bits. She sees them falling apart, but she knows her magic isn't as strong now after using so much of it on spells. The monsters just won't quit, they're closing in fast. She's urging the guy with her to book it, and when he's unsure, she insists that at least one of them has to survive. She'll use her magic to give him a head start, no matter what. The young mercenary doesn't listen to her but stays there and waits for the rescue team. He explains that the second rule of mercenary survival is to never abandon the mage, so he holds his ground to prevent the monster from getting closer. His goal is to give her enough time to recharge her lightning while he keeps the monster at bay, allowing her to cast her spell. She is shocked, as the boy has the balls to act on such a daring strategy. The warrior with a spear takes a strong stance, and his tactics work well in battle. He doesn't aim to kill the living armor, but he pushes and smashes them with his spear while maintaining a safe distance. Damien shoots his crossbow at the monsters, trying to fend them off from the wall. Unfortunately, this plan doesn't last long enough to stop multiple monsters. When she finally gathers enough mana to strike a light on the enemies, the monster's spears drill the young mercenary's body. She cries out in frustration and releases a massive burst of energy, instantly destroying the monsters around her. She wonders if the young mercenary could have survived if she had gathered her mana faster. As she watches the injured boy coughing up blood, she decides she's old enough to handle the weight of his likely death. She asks him about the third rule of mercenary survival. The boy barely manages to reply and tells her not to take jobs that involve gambling with one's life. The boy dies right after, and she turns toward another swarm of monsters rushing at her. She concludes that the boy was wrong. Saying so, she snaps her mana into her hands once more. She leaps at the monsters and starts knocking them away with sheer arm strength. She believes that if one wants to survive, he has to bet his life for a lot of money, and, most importantly, never stay with a mage, as they always take the credit. Her hand is shaking in pain, and she's lost hope. She concludes that being a mercenary is a mistake if one wants to survive. Our mage realizes her end is near when she can't find the strength to even light her cigarette. As the living armor gets closer, she realizes she might have taken a well-paid job, but accepts that this could be the end. Lucas appears out of nowhere while riding a horse, and warns her not to budge. He swings his sword and effortlessly takes down multiple monsters at once. Jupiter is so surprised that she drops her cigar when Lucas turns to her with a calm expression. Just before this moment, our hero is standing at the fort walls, and he sees the soldiers freaking out because of the giant monster. He quickly tells Lucas to reset the fire net and calm the troops down. Everyone's losing their heads, but our hero uses his indomitable commander skill. And like magic, the soldiers suddenly feel fearless and motivated. He's surprised because his skill not only shields them from mental breakdowns but also brings back their courage. He doesn't waste any time and just tells Lucas to lead the rescue squad and go save Jupiter. He knows he's basically sending Lucas into a death trap to save his comrades, but Lucas doesn't even flinch. Lucas shows up and swoops Jupiter onto his horse as they escape from the monsters. The monsters hurl spears at them while they ride, but Lucas takes them out with his sword. The knight really impressed Jupiter with his skills, and she thinks he'd be a great match for her granddaughter. Still, the knight just plays it cool and suggests that she save her energy to restore her mana since there are still a few monsters left. Jupiter laughs, saying that he's acting tough now. Still, he'll be soft as hell in front of his highness. She thanks him for saving her life, but Lucas says he's just following orders and feels bad for not saving his comrades. She tells him they'll mourn after the battle's over. At the city gates, soldiers blast cannons at the monsters. Watching the chaos, Ash thinks his expertise helped restore the kill zone, but he regrets losing his 4 hero characters in a fit of anger. He knows real life is way messier than any game, especially with the soldiers freaking out. Those darn horses messed up his plan, and now he realizes he needs to be more careful with every move. The giant wooden walls are burned down, and their clueless allies mess up the kill zone with crossfire. When the monsters stormed the gates, Ash called for a ceasefire because they had to defend the fortress wall. He checked his system and saw that he had taken out 2/3 of the enemy, so he felt confident that they still had the advantage. Lucas came back and told Ash that he had rescued Jupiter. Ash couldn't help but notice that Lucas always made a point of saying Dame before her name, clearly annoyed about her dishonorable discharge. However, Ash thought it was wiser to keep a mage happy. She's feeling really embarrassed about her mistake, which ended up costing innocent lives. Ash tries to reassure her, saying that no one could have known a spirit knight would show up and spook the horses. But she's still upset, especially since her 6 years of battle experience didn't help her deal with the situation. Now she's more determined than ever and ready to fight again, even to take down the spirit knight. But Lord Ash tells her to take a break and recover so she can fight when the time is right. As the swarm of living armor closes on the fortress, the cannons prove useless against the ruthless attack. Ash quickly assesses the situation and orders the artillery to cease fire, recognizing that it's ineffective without a clear kill zone. Turning to Damien, he urges him to take a breather, knowing that harder challenges lie ahead. Exhausted, Damien heeds the advice and settles down as the living armor begins scaling the fortress walls. Realizing that the monsters will soon attempt to breach the walls, Ash commands the soldiers to prepare for close combat. They quickly line up, armed with maces and shields, ready to face the approaching clash between the living and the undead. The stage is set for a dramatic showdown. As the monsters approach the top of the wall, Ash signals the soldiers. They start dropping stones and debris onto the climbing enemies. The stones, steel scraps, and remnants of reinforcements they collect prove to be effective. Many living armors fall and shatter under their weight, although a few quickly rise again. Ash feels frustrated as the relentless creatures keep advancing, ignoring the debris. He tells the soldiers to use spears to push them back. He clicks on the system window to reorganize the group and puts Jupiter in charge. The system notifies him that group interaction is activated, enhancing all magical attacks by 20%, which surprises our boy greatly. One monster strikes a soldier's spear, shattering it and leaving the soldier screaming in terror. More enemies climb with weapons drawn, and the soldiers stand ready, facing the horde. Ash worries about the tough close-quarter battle ahead, and wonders if the soldiers can withstand the assault. Suddenly, Lucas lands a powerful strike, cutting through a monster's helmet. He dashes along the wall and slices down monsters in his path. He lifts up his shining sword and says he'll take care of it himself, telling the soldiers to just hold their ground. Ash feels relieved and knows they have no other option. They have to survive, and every soldier needs to give their best. He turns to Lily and tells her to activate the next artifact. She quickly orders the magicians to activate the artifact of haste. A system notification confirms that all soldiers receive a 5% speed boost for the next 5 minutes. Looking at his skills in the system window, he sees how they can help in close combat. The soldiers start fighting the monsters, yelling to push them back. Lucas continues his relentless attacks and cuts through the living armor. Ash recognizes Lucas's strong will strike, a skill that grows stronger with each enemy defeated. He is doing well, but Ash knows it's not enough. The soldiers are still being overwhelmed by the monsters. One soldier is wounded while another pulls him back and calls for the injured to alternate with fresh fighters. Watching the mounting casualties, the Lord grimly thinks his soldiers are getting worn down, unlike the tireless living armor. Damien tells him to go back to the front lines, but he stops the kid. They need his and Jupiter's strength for the final showdown with the boss monster. Ash watches his soldiers fall and thinks about how to save them by taking down the living armor. Suddenly, a pillar of fire shoots up from the battlefield. He is surprised by the surge of magic, and then he sees Lily seated on the wall, unleashing her fire magic and smoking away many living armor. He tells her she did a great job with the attack and says he'll give her a promotion. Lily feels discouraged and mentions that she was thinking of quitting. He sees that she's getting increasingly tired from using her powers. He comes up behind her, grabs her wheelchair, and tells her she'll get a bonus for all her hard work. He encourages her to keep using her powers and create even more fire. She looks really worried and says she's almost out of mana and wants to bail, but her lord insists and pushes her to cast one more spell. Reluctantly, she gets ready to cast another spell, and you can see the fear on her face. Ash thinks to himself that with the group's help, magical attacks are now boosted by 25%, thanks to the combination of buffs. The bossy lord demands the use of the flamethrower spell once more. Clearly unhappy, she mutters that he should treat her like a human being. Lord Ash watches his soldiers, who are having a hard time, using their bodies to hold back the monstrous attack. Lucas slashes through the enemies with his sword. Ash tries to give Lily a mana-restoring potion, thinking of how she had burned the monsters to ashes. They finish the remaining creatures together, and the last living armor crumbles. The soldiers are totally shocked, but then they start cheering because they've finally won. But Ash interrupts them and tells them to stay focused because there's still one more enemy left. Out of nowhere, the leftover armor starts moving and flies toward the boss, who has been inactive until now. The armor pieces come together to form a huge metal suit around the boss, creating a massive figure with a gigantic sword. The boss completes its transformation and lands next to the city wall with a huge crash, shaking the ground and surprising the soldiers. A wave of frustration creeps in as he stares at the monstrous figure. He can't help but wonder if this is some kind of a cruel joke. How could this be just a level 1 boss in the early stage of the game? The huge metal beast trembles Ash's hands, but he shakes it off by tightening his grip. He encourages himself that it's just a level 25 monster. He tells the soldiers to fire and not hold back on the ammo. Cannon blasts slam into the creature one after another, trying to stop it before it hits the wall. No matter what obstacles they throw at it, the ghostly knight keeps on pushing forward as if nothing is happening. Getting frustrated, he tells Lily to use the third artifact. She quickly follows his command and activates it. This R-level artifact doubles the magic effect of just one person. Without hesitating, Ash chooses Jupiter since he's the strongest mage in the group. With the Indomitable Commander skill and the Jupiter artifact boost, Jupiter's energy level is off the charts. Ash points at the monster and tells her to aim all her power at its chest. She's brimming with energy. She raises her hands, and boom, yellow lightning lights up the sky. As bolts start pouring down from the sky, she warns the boss to watch out for lightning. She slams a powerful strike into the monster's chest, shattering its core of blue energy. Our guy sees the core and yells to Damien, who's ready with the ballista. He tells him to shoot, and Damien fires a huge energy arrow right into the core. Cracks appear, and the core begins to break. Ash thought the battle was over and complimented Damien, but his relief was short-lived. The monster continued to move, and the energy in its helmet intensified. Ash realized that the fight wasn't over. The monster raised its massive sword, bringing it even closer to the wall. He knew that if it struck the wall, everything would collapse. He shouts at Jupiter to give it another go. She is way more enraged and calls upon blue lightning, zapping it at the monster, hoping to finish this once and for all. The creature gets pounded by the lightning, but it keeps raising its sword. Ash sees the danger and shouts at the soldiers to run, telling them to get out of the way. But the soldiers freeze, watching the monster get ready to strike. Lucas hurries to Ash, telling him to move, but the beast slams its sword down before he can finish. The wall crumbles and the soldiers are thrown back, screaming in pain and terror. Ash takes a hard fall and cringes in pain. Lucas rushes over to check on him. Ash is shaken by the impact but is okay with it and asks about the wall. His reinforcement is looking at the damage in Ave. Ash sees a huge sword stuck in the wall, and the energy in the giant armor is slowly fading. As the noise dies, the armor monster shatters into large pieces that crash to the ground and release the last of its energy. He observes the scene, realizing they've finally defeated the first-level boss. Lucas warns Ash to be careful of this sneaky energy, which can be dangerous when it reaches its last surge. But Ash knows it's the last struggle from the spirit which deals no physical harm. He recognizes this tactic as the last surge of fear and madness that can shatter one's sanity on contact. The souls rush toward him, but he stands determined and glares into it. He commands the monster to vanish, as this territory is a human domain, and a bright glow starts to appear from his hands. The system states his use of the indomitable commander skill. His powerful wave of energy swells and erases the oncoming souls instantly. The soldiers are amazed by the prince's ability to dispel the floating particles and can't believe it's over. They wonder where the giant and the souls have gone. The dark clouds suddenly clear and sunlight shines down on the city. Ash raises his fist, declaring their victory. They have finally defeated enemies way more stronger than them and will continue to survive no matter what. The soldiers stop looking afraid and start to feel relieved. Lucas sees his lord smile calmly, showing that they have moved from feeling scared in battle to feeling happy about winning. Ash, still holding his fist high, considers whether his skill or words made the difference. Either way, it feels right because he has been sincere in his role throughout this journey. He shouts that they will crush all monsters and keep surviving. The system confirms that the first level is cleared thanks to the MVP, Jupiter, who pushes them to victory. The system also reminds the boy to check his gift in the inventory. That night after the battle, the town square is buzzing with life and celebration. Our hero braces everyone for the win. He raises his drink for a toast, offering drinks to all. The crowd goes wild, and the party kicks off. Music is blasting, soldiers and workers are serving drinks, and chefs are dishing out mouth-watering food. In one corner, two men arm wrestle with the newcomer winning. The loser demands a rematch using his left hand this time. Ash sits quietly, watching the celebration with a smile. Lucas walks over and tells him to eat because he hasn't eaten all day. He points out Ash that he doesn't look like a victorious commander. He literally defended against 1,000 freaking metal ghosts with little loss, so he should feel a bit happier. Our boy admits that the losses were small. As he takes a sip, he quickly spits it out and is shocked by the taste. He does not expect this strange flavor and wonders if it's even beer with 20% alcohol. However, his face grows serious as he thinks about the lives lost. Even though the losses were small, but every life matters. He knows he can't save everyone in such a harsh game, but fewer lives might have been lost if he had been more careful. Lucas tries to comfort him, praising his leadership. But Lucas knows these words can't take away his guilt. He reminds him that this is a victory party, and that his mood will affect the soldiers. He urges our boy to smile and join the fun because that's also part of being a leader. Upon this, Ash manages a smug. Eider suddenly appears and praises Lucas's words, for he also considers it important to mourn the lost. But celebrating is just as important. So, he offers our boy a plate of vegetables because eating only meat isn't healthy for his lord. He displeased our boy points out he hasn't eaten any meat yet. Eider laughs and brushes off his remarks while praising his effort on the battlefield. Clearly, this director is planning something. Ash reluctantly picks up a tomato. Eider suddenly announces to everyone that the lord is eating vegetables. He waves to the crowd, praising their highness for only eating vegetables since he has no meat. Our hero wonders why he is doing so. Shortly, a crowd rushes over to him, offer food, and sincere apologizes. They can't believe they made the prince eat just vegetables. He wonders what kind of life this Prince Ash must have lived. One man shouts for them to serve meat and bring more drinks for his highness. They walk down the street, leading Ash while drinking from their mugs. Ash wonders how things got out of hand so quickly as he chews on a piece of meat. He had planned to sit quietly and think about the battle. Lily tugs at his clothes, trembling while being drunk. She tearfully asks to let her quit duties. He tries to get rid of her, wondering no one quits in times like these. He thought of paying her more to get her convinced. Thanks to the two magicians who dragged her away, she'll be better off in bed in this condition. Now sitting next to him is Damien, who is acting strangely and is completely drunk. He wonders who got the kid drunk. He's shocked to see Jupiter pouring more alcohol into the kid's mug. He asks the evil granny why she's doing it with him. Jupiter says that the young boy is now a mercenary, and he needs to learn some bad habits. She will teach him everything like her own grandson. He gets annoyed why she'd ever needs teach her grandson such habit. The kid leans on his shoulder and admits he can't stop seeing his dead friend. He feels guilty for living without him, but whenever he gets near Ash, he feels at ease. Saying so, he passes out. Ash knows it's not him but his passive skill that helps. Jupiter also mentions her magic feels way stronger when he follows Lord Ash's commands. He recalls the system and knows it's not his leadership but the team's synergy. The buff was 25% this time, but how could he explain that? Lucas says that our boy makes him feel faster and stronger. He believes it's thanks his highness leadership talent. Ash jokingly asks if that's why Lucas is always by his side. He never thought this brave knight always stick to him for this reason. However, a crowd gathers for cheering up their conquer Lord Ash. He asked why they are gathering around. One man points out that Lord Ash's mug is still full. Our hero tries to avoid drinking once again, but the soldiers feel sorry, saying they don't know how to cheer him up. They're shocked that their prince is known for his week-long parties, but now he hasn't had a mug of drink. Our boy wonders what kind of life this prince had spent. The crowd urges Ash to drink with them, and reluctantly he agrees. With their leader joining in, the celebration continues all night, filled with food, drink, and music. Later, when he returns to his room, he is heavily drunk. He sits on his bed, looking at the 3 reward chests he received. He decides to open them before sleeping. He touches one and it lights up really bright. He's thinking it might be a top-tier item. Then, he puts on some black gloves and figures out they're super rare SSR rank and at the highest level. He's so frustrated that he throws the gloves against the wall. Out of all the awesome SSR equipment, why does he have to get this lousy item? Then, a system window pops up, saying they are Lucky Strike Level 7 combat gloves. He realizes that the damage from the gloves is determined through a roulette. He remembers using them to entertain people before, but knows they are useless in a real fight. He's looking at them, thinking there's no use in tossing them out since it's an SSR rank item. He's hoping for a big win in the future from these groves and trying to stay positive. He's wondering how he can stay positive when there are so many good items, and he's stuck with this crappy one. He's shouting and can't understand why he ended up with such a useless item. The next evening, he appears exhausted and complains of a headache. Lucas waits outside his door and is also looking just as tired as him. Looking at the knight's weary outlook, he tells him to rest. Lucas replies that he is still the prince's guard, so he has to guard him. Eider greets them both cheerfully, and our boy wonders how this idiot director looks so lively. The director offers them warm honey water, insisting they drink it. They readily sips it down and feels completely fresh. It's time to get ready for the next challenge. Later, our hero stands before a huge sword stuck in a crumbling wall. He points out that the wall wouldn't hold back wild animals, let alone monsters. Turning to the Masons Union president, he asks how long the repairs will take. The president estimates about 2 weeks. Just then, a system alert pops up that there are only 9 days and 20 hours left before the next level begins. Ash orders that everyone who can help with repairs must join in. He makes it clear how urgent the situation is, then asks Eider about the military expansion. Eider reports that new soldiers are on their way, and the ones who cleared the central region will return by tomorrow. Our boy realizes they won't make much progress until the reinforcements arrive. Strengthening the army is key, but they need more soldiers first. He tells Eider to report any updates immediately, stressing that they have to give everything they've got. Lucas asks what he means. Ash says they're going to the dungeon to stop the monsters at their source. Lucas asks if they're going back to Black Lake. Ash responds that this time, they're heading under the lake with the top squad. The idea is to go from defense to offense. After Ash gives out his orders, he tells everyone to take a break for the night. He'd rather demonstrate the mission to the squad than keep explaining it repeatedly. Damien is comforting a crying Lily and assures her that they'll meet up tomorrow. Our guy feels sorry for Lily, but the elite squad can take 5 members, so she's going with them. He tells Eider to get the supplies ready for the expedition. They need canned food, camping gear, and potions, as well as many light sources as possible. The next day in the backyard of Lord Crossroads' estate, Jupiter with a bag on her back admires the preparations and asks where they're going. Our boy gathers some stones to form a portal and tells her she'll find out soon. As the portal activates, Jupiter is shocked and asks if it's a teleport that had disappeared hundreds of years ago. Ash explains that on the other side is the monsters' breeding ground, their refuge beneath Black Lake, essentially their kingdom. Everyone listens carefully, but Lily is scared. Ash explains that their mission is to figure out why the monsters are appearing. He thinks that taking out the source is the way to stop the war. He hits the teleport button, sending them to the lakeside, and says they'll learn more details later. For now, they just need to follow. As the system announces the loading process, it gives a tip about gaining experience in battle. Our boy wonders why the system never gives more helpful advice. The group steps through the portal. As they look around, Jupiter comments that the lake looks the same as it did 20 years ago when royal soldiers guarded Crossroad. She remembers they had orders to fill the lake with dirt. Ash asks if they really tried to fill the lake with dirt, calling it a dumb idea. Jupiter explains that many battle mages were summoned to do it, but no matter how much earth and rock they used, the lake stayed the same. Rumors spread that it was connected to the abyss. A week later, monsters appeared and the troops had to retreat. That was her first visit to the lake. Standing by the water, Ash warns the group to stay alert as they prepare to go deeper. Lily begins to cry, shaking with fear. A system window suddenly appears in front of Ash, asking if he wants to enter the kingdom beneath the lake. Without thinking twice, he clicks the button. A red warning appears, saying there will be no way back until they reach a checkpoint. Ash isn't bothered and clicks through. A whirlpool forms in the lake, opening the passage. Without delay, he jumps in and dives deep into the water. As the system loads, it warns that carelessness is the biggest cause of death and tells him to stay alert. Surrounded by darkness, our boy hears strange hissing sounds growing louder. The air feels heavy, like the darkness is closing in. Lucas shouts for Ash, calling out several times. Ash answers, telling everyone to light their torches. Lucas is the first to light his, but its glow barely cuts through the thick darkness. The others light theirs, but they can only see a few meters ahead. Lily uses her fire magic to brighten up the place, but freaks out when she sees something. Lucas and Jupiter also notice something up ahead and look really surprised. They're standing in front of this huge gate that leads to a massive kingdom under the lake. Ash tells them that it's the kingdom under the lake, an underwater dungeon where the monsters they need to defeat. Our hero realizes that they can breathe and move easily thanks to the ancient magic around the city. Lily is curious about how such a huge city can remain hidden and how they can move so freely, considering they are in the Lake Kingdom. Lucas quickly tells everyone to stay quiet because someone is coming. A barefoot figure moves toward them, and everyone gets alert. They keep an eye on a girl with long white hair and a black hood as she comes closer. Ash reassures the frightened Lily and informs the group that she is probably an NPC guide, not an enemy. The girl stops before them and asks if they are treasure hunters looking for the kingdom's riches. Our boy wonders what she means. She warns them they won't find what they are looking for and should return while they still can. Ash thinks about her words and realizes he has never seen such an NPC in the game before. A place at the bottom of the lake was filled with NPCs, and now among those guides he had never encountered this NPC, although had gone through 742 playthroughs. He steps forward and tells the girl they came from Crossroad to stop the monsters. Our boy explains that the world outside is suffering because of the monsters kept popping out of the lake, and they are here to put an end to it. The girl says they will never be able to stop the monsters. Lots of warriors and heroes have tried to break the curse, but they all failed. She warns them not to enter the darkness, or the abyss will devour them. Our boy thinks if he was going to turn back that easily, he would have already returned to Earth. He tells her he is the Lord of Crossroad, the fortress city that stops the monsters, and that it is his duty to protect them. He says he is not afraid of the darkness, and asks her to guide them to another way inside since the main door is locked. The girl takes a moment to think and then agrees, but she's not sure if Ash's bravery is genuine or just plain reckless. She tells them to come along with her. When Ash asks for her name, she says that she has forgotten it and tells them to call her No Name. After they've been following her for a while, Lucas tells Ash he's worried it might be a trap. Ash reassures him and tells him to keep moving. They walk for a while until No Name stops and tells them this is the place. She turns to Ash and says they will enter the city if they go this way. This is the drainage system, and she warns them to be careful because it can be slippery. They walk through the narrow drain for about 5 minutes until they reach the first zone of the Lake Kingdom. It's a dry drainage area with no water flowing. Our boy activates a portal, and the system notifies him that this is a strong point, a safe zone where monsters can't enter. Now, they can return to this spot if they need to. Lily asks if she can go home now, but our boy turns her down and reminds her that they didn't bring all their equipment this far just to turn back. No Name says this is where her guidance ends. Now, they must proceed on their own. Ash thanks her for guiding them. She gives them one last warning that the kingdom has been entirely devoured by monsters. The further they go, the more powerful the monsters will be. If they still decide to enter the abyss, she advises them never to turn off their lights. She then wishes them blessings on their journey. After that, she walks into a dark tunnel. Lucas wonders who she is and how she survives in this dark city. Our boy isn't sure either. Damien was worried about this darkness that even he cannot look at anything with his eyes, and it seems like the darkness is alive. Lucas wonders how that lady can walk in such darkness without a light. Our guy can't figure out these things either. It is full of secrets even he, who has cleared the map on the highest difficulty, does not know about. He is sure of one thing, that they will meet No Name again at the bottom of the lake, either as enemies or allies. Soon, Ash and his team reach a checkpoint in the dried drainage. He reassures them that this should be a cakewalk, given their party's level. They head deeper into the darkness, entering a corridor that connects to the sewer pipes. Lucas wonders how long the corridor is. Ash replies that it ends soon. As they walk, our boy recalls the dungeon's map, composed of rooms and passages filled with enemies, items, and sometimes NPCs. Just as they enter the first room, a giant sewer rat appears. The system notifies them of their first challenge to defeat 14 level 3 gutter rats. The rats rush toward the team in unison. Ash remains calm, but Lily is terrified. He orders Lucas to take the front line. Lucas charges at the rats. Meanwhile, Ash advises Damien to target the rats' eyes or necks with his crossbow as they have hardy skulls. He cautions the mages to conserve their magic and only strike at those that get too close while he plans to watch the show. Lucas quickly dispatches the oncoming rats with well-placed strikes, and Damien's precision shots hit their weak points. Together, they clear the swarm of rats. Our boy appreciates everyone's performance, but something feels off. Lucas reports that they've only killed 13 monsters, yet the system indicated there were 14. Before anyone can react, the last rat launches itself from the shadows, catching our boy entirely off guard. Our hero lets out a surprised yell and swings without thinking. He delivers a powerful hit, scoring a whopping 121 points of damage with his gloves. The rat flies across the room. It slams into the wall with enough force to leave a bloody smear. Our boy is stunned by the sheer power of his gloves. 3-digit damage is very rare. Lucas is totally shocked and asks if he's okay. He's dying to know how Ash managed to kill the monster in just one shot. Lucas is totally shocked and asks if he's okay. He's dying to know how Ash managed to kill the monster in just one shot. Ash acts all casual and brushes off the achievement, labeling it the Imperial Prince Punch. He claims that only members of the Imperial family are allowed to use this superpower when they are in trouble. The party members don't really get it, but they let it go. It's cool that everyone picks up on Ash's signal. Moving on, the group finds themselves in the second room, and Ash suspects something is hidden here. Damien searches around and finds a treasure chest hidden behind a secret passage. Ash is happy that he guessed correctly and cautions about possible traps hidden as treasure chests. Jupiter, who is the squad's gold bug, rushes forward with wild excitement. Ash yells at her to watch out for traps, but she opens the chest anyway. Luckily, it's just full of treasure. Jupiter suddenly stops being so obsessed with money and gives it to Ash after sneaking a few coins and tucking them into her pocket. They continue clearing the rat monsters in the third room with ease, and they arrive at the last room, which is the boss's chamber. Ash plans to go back to the land after clearing this room. As the massive doors open, they see a grim sight. The floor is covered with the corpses of countless rats. The stink of death fills the air, and Ash covers his nose in disgust. At the far end of the room sits the boss, a monstrous rat man. He mutters to himself about eradicating and killing all the rats in the lake city. Damien is confused, wondering how the monster can speak human language. The monster's attention snaps to them, furious at the sight of intruders. He considers humans as rats. The system notifies them to defeat the rat man, Fafferly. Ash is puzzled by the human-like name of this creature. Suddenly, the monster charges at them, its voice roaring as it vows to kill them all. Ash is taken by surprise and hasn't instructed his team yet. Lily is totally freaking out, and then she shoots fire from her hands. The flames hit Farley directly while everyone else is still stunned. His fur catches fire, and he screams in agony while staggering but remaining on his feet. Jupiter then steps in and zaps Farley with a powerful lightning strike, telling him he can finally rest. With one last painful screech, the Ratman collapses and dies. Ash is amazed at how quickly the battle ends. Thanks to their mages' combined power, the monsters at this stage have zero magic resistance. He realizes that if they had used physical attacks, it would have been much harder. Lily yells at Ash to hurry home. With the boss defeated, they all gather around the treasure chest at the back of the room. The system confirms it as the boss room reward chest. Ash instructs Lucas to hold on to Jupiter to prevent her from causing any treasure-related incidents. Lucas does as ordered and physically restrains her while Ash opens the chest. Inside, he finds a glowing sword called the Rat Killer Sword. It is an R-rank weapon made specifically for slaying rats, and he hands it to Lucas, suggesting he hold on to it in case it becomes useful later. The final item in the chest is an automatic defense turret summon scroll, which is the reward for clearing Area 1. Ash feels satisfied because he came all this way just for this. He declares that it's time to leave. Lily is happy at the thought of finally returning home. As they leave the boss's room, the system notifies them that they have cleared the first zone. They walk through the connecting hallway until the drainage ends. From here, they enter the inside of the Lake Kingdom's Area 2 hidden alleyway. Ash looks around and is struck by the strange contrast. This was once a highly advanced city street, but now not a single light flickers and no signs of life remain. The once vibrant city is now dead and lost in endless darkness. Ash activates the portal, and the system confirms that the strong point for Area 2 has been connected. However, they cannot advance to the next area yet. Ash doesn't want to go any further today because the risks are too high. He praises everyone for their hard work and says that's all for today. He clicks on the system to teleport them back to the backyard of his mansion and announces that it's time to go home. The system notifies them that free exploration has been completed and a reward has been issued which increases the level of each squad member by 1. As the portal closes, an unknown figure suddenly appears in front of it. He stops and says that it's the final player who has come all the way here. He starts playing a flute, and a large army of giant rats gathers around him. The man is wearing a mask with eerie smile. He speaks softly, saying they must be forgiven for their sins. The rats walk beside him, and he declares that everything he does is for the sake of the kingdom under the lake. Our hero and the others step out of the portal and he appreciates everyone as he tells them to take a good rest. But Jupiter can't sleep because she can't even grasp what could have happened. No one could have known about a dungeon under the lake. She asks His Highness if he has anything more to tell them. Yet our boy doesn't have anything else to explain for now. Although he cleared the game, the story never made it clear why the Lake Kingdom ended up like that. Ash feels he must go into the center of the city himself and slowly uncover the truth with his team. Jupiter says she definitely won't be able to fall asleep, so she's going to get something to drink. Lily expresses that she also wants to go with Jupiter because she also feels she won't be able to sleep. Jupiter takes her away and they both head toward the bar while Ash thinks they seem to be working well together. Damien says that he's going to return to the chapel as he's a little scared of the darkness, but will feel better after some prayer there. Ash agrees and tells the young boy to rest. He turns to Lucas and suggests they should rest too. On their way to Mansion, Lucas asks if they will return to the dungeon later. Our boy says they won't go until the next defensive battle. Lucas asks if they can figure out what monsters will appear next. Ash tells him they already know. He explains that the next threat will be a pack of sewer rats. He believes the monsters will overflow from the source of the Lake Kingdom and then attack the city. He further explains that the monsters they encounter during exploration in nearby areas are the ones that will attack them next time. They go inside the house, and Ash calls for Eider. He hopes that food and a bath are already ready. Eider rushes toward them and tells his lord that they have a problem. Eider informs them that there will be no reinforcements, and the central and nearby kingdoms say they will not be able to send reinforcements. Our boy inquires the reason for it, but they both fall silent when they hear Lucas's stomach growl very loudly. He feels embarrassed and apologizes to His Highness. Ash notices this and suggests they talk about it tomorrow. For now, he needs to bring them some food. The next day, he asks about the reasons of no reinforcements. Eider says that war recently broke out on the Western Front and the Empire sent all its forces there. They gathered all the soldiers from all regions and transferred them to the Western Front. There are simply no extra troops that can be used for reinforcements now. Our boy feels that something is not right. The Empire is always at war regardless of the time of year or day, and the Empire quarrels with the neighboring countries. But they suddenly decide to pull all the troops from the southern cities just so coincidentally when he requested reinforcements. He asked about mercenaries, as they were hiring all of those who came to the guild. Eider says they have already hired everyone they have. Ash thinks that only a couple of days have passed since the last battle, and it would be unreasonable to expect the mercenary guild to fill up immediately. What should he do now? He notices that Eider is smiling while looking at him, and he grabs his head and loudly asks why he is smiling, or if he knows a way to quickly recruit troops. Eider says that it will be very problematic. Ash asks loudly if he really thinks he cares right now. They now have to worry about the next stage, and he should tell them how to get more soldiers. Eider continues to smile and agrees that he should follow him. Sometime later, the three of them stand on the street together with their horses ready. Lucas asks the director where they will have to go. Eider surprises everyone by saying that they are heading to the former lord. They are going to the mansion of the Margrave of the Cross Frontier. At Margrave of the Frontier protects the border, and they have more power than General Margraves. In other words, they are not just nobles from the provinces but military commanders in charge of defense. On their way, Eider explains that when the first peasants migrated to Crossroad, the Margrave family of Cross was already ruling this city. After they constructed the road, the fort at its base was named Crossroad. Ash wonders why he gave up his leadership here. He thinks that this front is quite far from the center. The Margrave even had more power than the Emperor, but he gave up his lordship and requested that this land be ruled by the Central Empire. That's why Ash became the new lord of these lands. Ash wonders why he abandoned his own land that his family had ruled for generations. Eider explains that everything is quite complicated there. It will be easier if he asks him personally. Sometime later, they arrive at the large mansion. They stop at the entrance and Eider says that after he gave up his leadership, he moved here. Ash wonders if someone really lives in this old place. Eider tells him he usually sends the essentials over here. They are noticed by an old man who comes out of the building and shouts who the hell they are. This old man shouts to get the hell out of his property and how dare they come here. Eider runs to him and asks the respected Margrave how he is doing. Ash can't believe that this drunkard old man is the Margrave of the Frontier, the former lord of the city. Eider tells the Margrave that he brought guests here. The old man asks what guests he is talking about and tells if hasn't made sure that nobody looks for him. Eider asks him to at least listen to them. He introduces the Margrave to the new lord, His Highness. Our boy says that he is glad to meet the Margrave Cross. He introduces himself as the Emperor's youngest son and the new lord of Crossroads City. He thinks that even though his character is reckless, he cannot treat the Margrave of the Frontier poorly. It feels awkward to him, but he has to try his best to sound polite. He continues to say that he would really like to talk to him about the frontier defense. The Margrave does not listen to him and orders them to get out. This shocks our boy very much. The old man shouts at him that he said to get out. Ash thinks that he is already crossing boundaries. The Everblack Empire is a strict class-based country. Even if this old man is a Margrave, how dare he treat the prince so rudely while also demanding to leave right away? Ash feels very angry at the Margrave and asks him what he allows himself to do. He looks at the old man and reminds him that he is superior. However, he calms down when the old man takes out a large spear and shield. He wonders what it means to lift a weapon against the imperial family. The Margrave shouts to get the hell out of here, and our boy thinks that he is a crazy bastard and he must avoid meeting such crazy people at all costs. Ash says that he will come back and hopes that by then, Margrave will have learned to communicate normally. The Margrave shouts that they must never come back again. Ash restrains the angry Lucas and says that he should be more patient. This Margrave's full name is Charles Cross. He never directly shows himself in the game, but even then Ash remembers the old man because he is the father of the strongest tank Evangeline Cross. She is popular among SSR rank heroes due to her top-tier performance and rank. Our boy knows he will have to persuade this drunkard so he can recruit his daughter. Ash wonders how this old man could possibly solve his problems with the troops. Eider explains that the Margrave of Cross has his own personal army, and they are elite soldiers who are deeply loyal to him. If they can come to an agreement, the problem of troop shortage will be resolved. Ash understands that he must persuade him at all costs. Eider suggests that there might actually be a way. He explains that sometimes only an alcoholic can become close to another alcoholic. Ash thinks that even though he wants to live a good and healthy life, it seems this world won't allow him to do so. Sometime later, our boy returns to the Cross family estate and calls Margrave out loudly. Margrave steps outside and asks if he values his life. He reminds Ash that he has already warned him not to come near him again, but he notices a cart covered with cloth. He asks about it and Ash reveals enormous bottles of alcohol, then asks if it's what he loves the most. Our boy is a spoiled man who enjoys all kinds of entertainment and is an embarrassment to the Empire. He never visits the countryside empty-handed, so he brings premium alcohol. He offers some to the Margrave. He cannot be able to resist this offer and invites Ash inside to drink together. Meanwhile, Lily is asleep in her room. She dreams of Ash as a monster, with her wheelchair protecting her. As Margrave opens the door to the estate, our boy enters the messed-up mansion. He notices several bottles on the floor and a strong alcoholic smell. Covering his nose, he thinks Margrave must be a real addict. Margrave tells him he hasn't drunk with anyone in a long time. Our boy wonders if the cups are clean. Margrave assures him that while his house is a mess, the cups are clean. He grabs the bottle Ash brought and sees it's a rare imperial whiskey, Peacemaker from the first year of production. This drink is named after the current emperor, making it very valuable. Ash has spent a lot on it, hoping to get some valuable results. His silent intentions of favors from the stubborn Margrave seem clear. Before he can finish a toast, Margrave starts drinking and quickly empty his glass. He admires that it feels premium as it goes down the throat. Our boy asks if he can feel the drink's quality. Margrave explains that to compare it fairly with cheap alcohol, they must treat it the same. Ash does not drink much alcohol, so he cannot tell if Margrave is talking nonsense. When he tries to bring up his real reason for visiting, Margrave stops him and says not to talk about anything else. But our boy asks for something to eat on the side. He thinks that the drunkard just pours alcohol into his stomach and gives Ash some dried fruits to eat. He says he made them with fruits harvested from the orchard behind the mansion, which he manages as a hobby. Ash tries them, but they taste terribly bitter, and he spits them out. Margrave finds it rude to reject his harvested fruits, so he tries one himself and quickly spits it out and realizes they are trash. He pushes the rest toward Ash, giving them to him as a gift. Our boy is confused and wonders why he is gifting something that cannot be eaten. Margrave is indignant and say he is gifting them as he cannot eat himself. Ash guesses that Margrave blabbers nonsense in an oddly persuasive way. Margrave starts explaining that in Crossroad, the sunlight is rich and the soil is fertile, so there is no better land for fruit farming than here. Ash wonders why the fruits taste so bad then, but Margrave continues explaining that the land is also great for growing all kinds of crops, if only the monsters didn't attack so often. When monsters die, they sprinkle the land with muddy mana, contaminating the entire area and making it cursed and unable to grow crops. That is why there are no farming fields around Crossroad. The Imperials make alcohol from fruits that cannot be harvested in this area. Ash then questions why Margrave is still taking care of his orchard. Margrave explains that everyone lives with at least one regret in their life, and that orchard is his regret. With such thoughts, he cannot even drink normally. Ash asks if Margrave can guess why he's here, but Margrave reminds him that he said not to talk about anything other than alcohol. Ash shouts he'll talk anyway. He explains that monsters have started moving again, and there are many of them. The last invasion was by 1,000 living armors, and though they managed to stop them, the wall was badly damaged. They don't have enough soldiers, and Ash asks for troops from Margrave's command. Margrave says he has no soldiers, but Ash knows there are private soldiers serving his family. Margrave says that all he has are friends whom he trained and fought alongside in many battles, but when he gave up leadership and let go of his spear and shield, those friends also abandoned their weapons. They are all retired now. Ash persistently asks him to reconvene them, but Margrave says it is of no use because that land is not worth protecting. He advises Ash not to risk his life for worthless fronts. This is advice from a man whose purpose was to protect that land. He asks Ash why he came to this land if everything is dying and there is no hope or future. He tells Ash to leave the land as soon as possible before being devoured by this cursed place. Our boy leaves the estate and heads toward the horse. Lucas waits and asks how it went and whether he convinced Margrave. Ash says he did not succeed but received a generous gift and feels not everything is finished yet. Ash thinks the Margrave has been through a lot and asks if Lucas knows anything about it. Lucas denies knowing anything. Ash mentions that Eider told him it would be easier to ask Margrave directly. He thinks Eider is too cunning, so they must work with what they have and do their best. He wonders what else they can do and realizes they must fix the wall and prepare for war. No matter what, the monsters will come, so Ash needs to focus on preparation and create a strategy to destroy the monsters with the forces they have. Ash says they should return to Crossroad because there is much to do. The system window shows that the second stage will consist of an unknown boss and 3,251 giant gutter rats on the 5th level. The next morning, they remove the great sword from the city wall. The president of the Masons Union informs our boy that they have destroyed the huge sword. Now, they will remove the fragments and start restoring the wall. Our boy tells them not to remove the fragments. He believes they will serve as an excellent barricade, perfect for a mousetrap. He asks how long it will take to repair the wall. The president says the wall's condition is worse than they thought. Our boy interrupts him to ask for an expected date, and the president states they need 10 days. He realizes they have about a week until the next stage, and time is running short. He thinks about the fort walls, which are the result of the Empire's architectural technology, and he knows they cannot simply be filled with stones. He decides to bring in more workers and supplies to finish the repair in a week, no matter the cost. The president wants to object to Ash's request, but it grows his anger and tells him to speak up. He knows it is an unreasonable demand, but they must push forward. He explains that the size of the rats is comparable to large dogs, and there are 3,000 of them, so they need to repair the wall no matter what. The president agrees to give their best as Ash encourages him about their dedication and work. He turns to the rest of the workers and cheers them up to protect the world. After a few days during the day, he oversees the repair of the defenses, and at night he drinks with Margrave. That day they exchange drinks without conversation. The defensive line gradually restores, but Ash's liver suffers from overwork. After 3 days of drinking without speaking, Margrave finally speaks and asks if our boy has anyone he loves. Ash feels surprised and confused by the question. Margrave says he wonders if he has anyone he loves, but our boy is speechless, so he guesses Ash doesn't. He again asks Ash to think about it if he really has someone he loves. Ash becomes thoughtful and starts to wonder about it. Back in his real life before streaming, he was alone and unloved, just surviving day by day. He recalls how he became popular as a streamer and gained the love of many viewers. Some viewers even requested silly things, like twerking for money and getting naked if he failed the mission. However, he pushes those thoughts away as he realizes that their affection is one-sided. No matter how hard he thinks, he isn't loved by anyone. Margrave then tells him that he has led a dreary life. Our boy becomes annoyed and makes fun of Margrave, asking about his own love life. Margrave loved someone deeply, his wife. She died 3 years ago, torn to pieces by monsters in the orchard, and he had to bury her with an empty coffin. Every lord of this land is haunted by this misfortune, which could be called a curse. There will be a moment when Ash also has to choose between the city or someone he loves, and there are no exceptions to it. From distant lords of the past to his grandfather and father, no one has been able to escape this curse. Margrave trembles as he reaches for his glass. He explains that this curse also found him. For decades, monsters showed little activity, which allowed peace to reign in the fortress. However, as finances fell, he had to open his own business to survive. Then, his wife suggests setting up a farm south of the fort. Ash is confused about why outside the fort. Margrave explains that the northern lands are already saturated, so the empty and peaceful southern lands are definitely attractive. Monster raids are rare there, so soil contamination is negligible. That is why they expand their farmland to the south. Rumors about fertile lands spread and refugees begin to gather here from everywhere. For a while, everything is fine. That orchard was at the southernmost part of those pioneering farmlands. As a lord's wife, she planted trees and seeds in even the most dangerous areas. Margrave remembers how she fed him grapes with her soiled hands. Their first harvest was modest, but nothing was sweeter than these. At some point, he begins to hope that someday he will be able to move away from the routine of killing monsters and start living a life of cultivating the land and harvesting fruits. However, there is no way that will happen. In the second year of his farming life, they receive information about 100 huge monsters rapidly advancing in their city. He hurried back to the city after saying a warm goodbye to his wife and telling her to be careful. He leaves the farmland, but as he reaches the city, he finds out that the monsters have split into two groups. Some have separated from the main group and attacked from the south where the farms are located, while the main unit is already attacking the city. This is where he has to choose between saving his wife or saving thousands of citizens in the city. He asks Ash to guess what he chooses. Our boy guesses that Margrave chose to save the city. Margrave does exactly what his family has done in the past. According to the principles he was taught, he chooses the city. He defends the walls of the fort and defeats the monsters. After that, he hurries to the farms without any rest. However, he can only find trampled fields and mountains of corpses. Just a dozen monsters tore apart hundreds of people, and his dear wife is among them. He chooses to stick to his duties, and in return, he loses what is most precious to him. He reflects on the weak frontier defense and the unreasonable extension of borders southward, but he blames himself for all this. Because he thinks he abandoned his wife and chose the city. Even his daughter called him insane, unable to understand his choice. A few days later, she also left him alone. In the end, this is the result of protecting this land his entire life. His wife died, and his daughter left him. This is just one example among many others. Ash listens to him carefully. Margrave asks what else this front line is called. Our boy asks if he means the City of Graves. Margrave agrees and says that this city stands on corpses, and one day it will force him to make a choice when he has to sacrifice his most precious thing to protect this city. Our boy feels this sounds more like a prophecy than a curse, as if an inevitable bad outcome looms. Margrave continues by saying that his family has carried this sacrifice through generations, but this cannot continue. He will not hand over this curse to his daughter. Ash understands that Margrave left his position to protect his daughter from inheriting this curse. Margrave says he wants her to get out of here alive and unharmed so she can live happily. Our boy thinks that she is the SSR-ranked Evangeline Cross, the character he desires to recruit for the front line, but Margrave tries to keep her away from the battlefield. Margrave says that he has protected this city long enough, sacrificing his loved ones in the process, and he wants to stop now. Ash thinks that the pride of a man who has defended the front line all his life no longer remains. Margrave expresses that he wants to die in this orchard, not on top of the fort wall. Only the man's remorse for not being able to stay by his wife's side in her last moments overwhelms him. Margrave hopes that our hero understands why he cannot help him. He shared the whole truth as thanks for keeping him company. Now he must leave, and he gives Ash his final advice. If faced with this choice, think carefully so there are no regrets later. On the 5th day of repair work, with only 2 days left before the next stage begins, and our boy checks on the workers. He brings food for them so they can take a break and eat. The workers are grateful, but were expecting alcohol. He tells them to shut up and eat to get back to work as soon as possible. The president of the union is very thankful, and our boy asks how the repairs are going. The president says the work is going well, because our boy provided enough workers to finish on time. In 2 days, the fort wall will be fully repaired, and Ash already handled the hardest part. Our boy turns to the trembling old man nearby and says it's time for them to install the device. The old man agrees and shouts with excitement. They finally get to use a summoning scroll they had obtained from a dungeon. This scroll became usable only after being given to the alchemists for research. The system asks Ash if he wants to use the scroll for a defense turret. He activates the scroll, and it disappears in a burst of magic light. The system tells Ash that he has acquired a new skill, which is the power to summon a protective turret. A large pile of materials is gathered by the workers. Ash thinks about the chests he found earlier and feels lucky that he finally got something useful. He pulls out the R-rank magic core, and with the gathered materials, he can install the turret. The system asks him to choose a location. Ash selects the spot on the system screen. Right away, the materials rise into the air pulled by magic to come together to form a turret. In no time, the turret is complete, and everyone watches it in awe. The turret can rotate and aim in different directions. Our boy says it looks perfect, while the alchemist explains that this is a magical construction technique that has been lost for centuries. Ash pats the turret and thanks everyone for their efforts, as the defense line is now stronger. Seeing everyone so cheerful, he hopes things stay this way. Next, they head to the blacksmith. Lucas's custom-made armor is ready, and he is thrilled with it. This armor was crafted using the magic core of an SR-rank Spectre Knight. Though the armor has low durability, it grants the wearer 5 seconds of invulnerability through Spectre mode. Lucas thanks His Highness, and our boy reminds him to make good use of it. Ash thinks about how Lucas almost cried when they took his measurements, and decides he should give Lucas gifts more often. He thanks the blacksmith for crafting such fine armor. The blacksmith is also grateful for the opportunity to work with Ash, and hopes they can continue to collaborate. Our boy thinks that the blacksmith's skills will be crucial until the end of the game, so he will visit often. He then tells Lucas they need to go to the west of the city for an important event. Ash thinks about the western part of the fort, the sounds of cannon fire and the memories of the dead lingering in the air. Soldiers who died during the last defense were buried under fresh tombstones. Not many died, but Ash isn't sure if that's good or bad. A choir sings nearby as Ash stands before the graves, reflecting on how busy his day has been. Later, our boy sits in the field near the cemetery. Margrave approaches him, mentioning that a large portion of the city's budget is spent on funerals. He reminds Ash that this is the front line of the monster war. This place devours lives like a storm, and eventually, there will come a time when our boy can no longer afford to keep up. Ash asks if he came all this way just to say that, or if he had simply run out of alcohol. Margrave says that there's no such thing as too much alcohol, and even he has to go out to buy it, but that's not why he's here today. He visited his old comrades, had a little drink, and asked if they wanted to help defend the city. Our boy eagerly asks about their response. Margrave says they agreed to return and fight. It is the best news our boy heard all week. Margrave says he isn't sure how helpful those old friends will be, but they are getting armed again, and he is giving leadership to him. He warns that these veterans are getting old, so our boy should be careful with them. Our boy thanks him, who tells him there's no need to thank him but to thank his friends instead. He is surprised by Margrave's help since he had given up hope of getting any, but he is grateful for the unexpected support. Margrave did what he could, but now our boy must take care of the city. He wishes our boy luck. Ash feels grateful for his help and vows to give it his all. He promises to seek Margrave's wisdom in the future. Margrave asks him to bring a drink next time. As he leaves, and our boy offers to send him some medicine, but Margrave declines by saying that he should not send anything like this at all. Margrave sighs, waves goodbye, and walks away. Ash guesses he's heading back to his orchard. He wants to stop Margrave, knowing he could be of great help in the defense, but Margrave has already lost too much in this city. Ash watches him disappear into the distance, thinking they'll talk more next time. But he doesn't know that the next chance will never come. 2 days later and early in the morning, the repairs are finally complete. The president of the Masons Union admits that a few spots were not repaired perfectly because they were rushed, but he assures Ash that the wall will hold, and our boy praises them for their great work. The preparations for the defense are now done as the ammunition is ready. The military forces have grown, and they now have 300 Twilight troops. He heard that at first there were about 1,000 of them, but he is still very thankful for this. The protective turret is also ready to defend, and our boy is making love with this turret because this good boy looks very trustworthy to him. He even sets up barricades to create a death zone. Everything is perfect, and Ash feels prepared for the monsters. At the same moment, a guy in a mask who is in the city under the lake stops far from the city and sees all their preparations for battle. A soldier on a horse rides fast toward the city entrance. He reports from the base that the monsters are coming. Our hero sees the monsters in the distance. The system warns that 10 minutes are left before the second stage begins. Ash announces that the monsters will arrive soon, so they must stay alert. The soldiers agree loudly. In all the times he played this game, he never had better conditions for battle. He is prepared for the monsters. In the rising dust, a man in a mask watches the city from afar. Our boy is surprised when he notices him. He stares and wonders who this person might be. Lucas asks if something is wrong, and our boy wonders if Lucas can see the figure. But in an instant, the man is gone. Our boy calls out to Damien and asks if he saw someone there, but Damien uses his skill and sees nothing either. Ash wonders if it was his imagination. But if it wasn't, then who could it be? The ground begins to shake. This means the monsters are close. Our boy tells himself to stay calm. Whether he was hallucinating or not, he must focus. He is determined to stop the rats, as planned. He shouts to prepare the cannons. He orders them to fire, and the soldiers begin launching cannonballs. The giant rats running toward the city notice the flying projectiles. The shells hit the monsters near the wooden barricades. The explosions echo, and Ash watches closely. The system reports a growing kill count, with almost 100 rats taken down in the first few strikes. Ash says they should keep going and thinks the monsters are strong only in numbers. Since they come in large groups, it is easier to fire into the crowd and hit multiple targets. He checks the system and sees that they have killed 924 level 5 gutter rats in about 30 minutes. If this continues, there will be no problems. Suddenly, rats begin climbing the wooden walls. Ash uses his spyglass and sees them crawling over the barricades, using the bodies of dead rats as stepping stones. The wooden walls start to buckle under the weight. Ash can't believe it. The death zone has collapsed. He orders the artillerists to change their target and the ballistae units to prepare to fire. There is still some distance between the broken barricades and the fort, and our boy knows the traps will slow the rats down. The cannons and ballistae continue firing at the horde, but the rats are dodging the ballistae shots, and our boy didn't expect this. The soldiers tell Ash that the monsters are too fast and can't hit them easily. Our boy feels frustrated that these rats are much faster than he anticipated. He should have considered that four-legged monsters would move quickly. At this rate, more rats will reach the fort than he thought. Suddenly, the protective turret begins to glow and aims at the rats. It fires magical projectiles in all directions. Our boy is surprised by the turret's automatic defense. The giant rats scream as the shells explode, scattering them. The turret's power waters Ash's mouth, and he thinks nothing is better for defense than this turret. But it isn't enough to cover the whole battlefield. Soon the turret needs to reload as it runs out of bullets. Our boy looks across the battlefield, but there are still too many rats. The front line has been breached sooner than expected. The broken sword pieces near the walls slow the rats, but they will reach the fort soon. Ash worries about close combat because this is the worst outcome, and he cannot afford its damage. Suddenly, the cannon fire becomes more accurate and the shots hit the fast-approaching rats perfectly. He quickly turns and wonders who could be firing with such precision. It turns out that Margrave's Twilight troops have joined in, helping the soldiers and cheering them on for their great hits. The presence of these seasoned veterans makes a much more significant difference than Ash expected. One veteran encourages the soldiers to keep standing firm and warns them not to overwork themselves, since there are still hours left in the battle. Another veteran urges the shooters to keep firing even if they miss. They act as mentors to the younger mercenaries. One of them tells Ash he can trust them to handle the soldiers and take care of everything. Ash feels reassured as these veterans can be relied on. So far, the defense is holding up smoothly. Thanks to the work of the Twilight troops, they were able to attack the gutter rats more effectively and defend against them with greater precision. At the same time, Ash's team members are all busy with their tasks. Lucas is ordering the soldiers about the left front and to aim more carefully to cover a wider area. Lucas is in charge of the front line, and he is responsible for conveying general orders to the entire front. Ash admits that he still doesn't fully understand the military art of this world, but Lucas always understands perfectly and relays them with precision. Meanwhile, Damien is still shooting. He gets rid of rodents that get too close to the walls with precise shots to the head. He is good at sniping, an ability that might not seem all that valuable in the midst of such carnage. However, any reduction in the number of enemies matters. Ash then turns to Lily. She is in charge of the defensive battle artifact and informs about the gravity artifacts. Ash watches her energetically giving orders. Lily notices him looking at her with an inspired expression. She winks at him and gives him a thumbs up. He thinks that no matter how hard she appeals to go home, she will be put to work if needed. Finally, the last member of his squad, Jupiter, lies on the ground and is watching others doing great work. He looks at her angrily and thinks that he of course told her to rest and be on guard for now, but she somehow settled in too well here. Jupiter starts to get up and says that her back hurts a lot from collecting mana. Ash cannot say anything to her as she is the most powerful magician. Our boy does not really like this old granny. Thanks to everyone except Jupiter's hard work, the defense is going well. The defense turret recharges and fires a very strong shot. A lot of magic missiles hit the crowds of rats. Ash is in love with this turret. He thinks that at this rate, they will quickly be able to fight back. He wonders if this is the first time they will win without any damage. He notices someone in the distance and wonders what it is. He sees a masked man standing very far away and thinks that he is the same freak as he was then. So it wasn't a hallucination. He uses the map creation skill. He is very surprised when he notices something and thinks that it is very bad. He thinks of it as a hostile NPC invasion, which just happens in the second stage. Anything can happen during an attack. Any variables make the game more interesting, and one of these events is the invasion of an enemy NPC. However, this can bury all hopes of a successful passage. An event like this is not supposed to happen yet. The director of the game that he can complain to isn't even there with him. Ash calls Damien and asks if he can see him too. They both look at the masked man who is standing very far away. He uses his skill to see this man and asks if he means by that brat. Ash says that he should kill him right now. Damien is very surprised as he looks like an ordinary person to him. Ash says that it doesn't matter, and he should just kill him while he can. He thinks that he is sure that this is an NPC from the kingdom under the lake. He is familiar with this gesture and costume. Ash points to this man and says that he must be killed before he plays the flute. Damien holds his crossbow with trembling hands and wants to say something to His Highness. Ash tells that he is his weapon, so he must do as he says, if he doesn't want more people to die. Suddenly, the masked man begins to play his flute and releases strong sound waves. Ash is very shocked when he hears this. He turns to the side and looks into the distance. The masked man plays his flute and keeps a watchful eye on the city. All the rats hear this loud sound and turn in its direction. All the soldiers look at the huge crowd of rats who have stopped their advance. They look at it in surprise and wonder what is happening. The masked man continues to play his flute and releases sound waves, causing the rats to go berserk and start making loud noises. They immediately begin to run very quickly in one large crowd toward the gate leading to the city. Ash asks where these rats are running. Lucas says loudly that they are heading toward the center of the wall. This is the place they recently finished repairing. Ash shouts that the ballistics and cannons must change direction to focus fire at the center. Immediately after this, all the cannons simultaneously fire at the monsters that quickly run toward the wall. Ash thinks that the response on the defense line wasn't sudden. The change of direction was too sudden. The rats run very quickly toward the wall. After this, one of the rats jumps forward very quickly, making loud noises. The soldiers stop shooting and look at what is happening below. Ash looks down with a very surprised expression. He sees the rat slamming into the wall with all its might. Several more rats run very quickly toward the wall, and he realizes that these rats are ramming the wall with their heads. The soldiers also wonder what is happening. Ash looks at the rats crashing in with the recently finished fixing wall. They completed the repairs at best a couple of hours ago. The workers left very tired because the deadlines were merciless, but they still failed to perfectly repair this wall. Their goal was simply to fill the gap, which means that cracks are inevitable. Sewer rats tend to get into these cracks. They bang their heads against the wall, scratch the stone with their claws, and chew their way through the wall. This is the ideal strategy for them in this situation for monsters like rats. Our boy becomes very angry and displeased due to this. He looks at the masked man who stands very far away, and thinks that for some reason it seems to him that this freak is now laughing at them. He remembers this NPC from the kingdom under the lake. He was notoriously called a monster with a flute. He needs to get rid of this freak urgently. He turned to Damien, instructing him to shoot the masked man, but the young kid trembled while aiming at it. The masked man vanishes before his eyes in spite of the repeater orders from his lord. Damien apologizes as he can't aim to kill a human even if it's their enemy. Ash remembers that he is indeed a healer who can't hurt humans. Still, he has to pull the trigger on humans because they will face many human enemies. Otherwise, his attacking powers will itself shrink to half. However, he pats him and turns towards the more concerning problem, which is the rats have gone berserk mode and are striking their heads against the gate to break it. He commands the cannons and ballista to shift their aim to the center of the rats' attacking line to blow up their progression. At the same time, he instructs Jupiter to use her full power to bake these rats into crispy snacks. She is already waiting for her lord's commands, so she creates a powerful lightning bolt that hits the entire enemy right in front of the gate. Without even looking down to assess the damage, He calls Lily to get ready with the strongest flamethrower artifact. She readily prepares 3 of them, and now they start to spew hellish fire on the rats. Using a combination of lightning, fire, and cannon blasts, our boy gets happy to microwave and bake the rats' corpses extra crisp. His strategy works because the enemy tries to gather in a single spot to hit the weakest point of their defensive wall. But he turned the same spot to his advantage and blew the hell out of them. He boasts about his strategic skills to fend off the enemies quite successfully. But this relief is short-lived when he notices the system window reveals the stats of the boss monsters who were previously unknown. It's an elite Ratman, a champion at the staggering high 30th level. He thinks that since the monsters' details are now revealed, it means that they have already appeared on the battlefield. Moreover, they bring with them even more sewer rats and they are trying to break through the fort wall. A huge monster rat runs towards the gate with ballistic speed. He tells the soldiers to do whatever it takes to stop it. The soldiers start shooting their cannons, but the monster keeps going despite taking many hits. Ash figures his rat is at least twice the size of the one they killed in the dungeon. Now, this crazy giant monster is running towards the fort, and he thinks that one blow from this monster on the fort's wall will be enough to destroy it. While he watches it getting nearer, the defense turret has recharged and fires another burst. Several magical projectiles that fire from the turret fly at this monster rat. All these projectiles hit the huge monster and killed it right on the spot. But Ash feels it is insufficient because 2 more rat champions are heading their way. So he once again uses the cannon fires, but this time he uses Jupiter quite differently. He commands her to activate the mana amplifier. The old granny fills the sky with lightning bolts that strike the rat monsters with dispersed damage. Her power is so intense that it causes little rats' bodies to melt like ice in the sun. But the 2 huge ratmen continue to run to the side by breaking through the lightning attack. This stuns Jupiter as she finds it hard to believe how this is even possible because her attack was too scattered. The Ratman champions are able to avoid any significant damage. Ash spins around and yells for Lily to bust out the flamethrower again. She explains that all the artifacts are too hot to handle. But our boy doesn't give a damn. Lily is stunned because this means she has to unleash her firepower. She starts using her fire magic with her classic worried look, knowing she'll again be thrown into the thick of it. Her fire magic hit one of the rat monsters, stopping it dead in its tracks with a loud screech. The flames quickly spread over the creature, turning it into a walking fireball. Then it fell over with a crackle, burnt to a crisp like a bag of overcooked chips. Ash panics as the last rat monster sneaks up behind the boss and makes a beeline for the fort. He yells at everyone to take out the monsters before they wreck the gate. Upon hearing his command, Lucas channels energy into his sword. He hurls it from the fort wall at the approaching monster. The sword hits the rat man's neck and causes it to scream, but this damn monster still bears the damage. Ash turns to Damien and tells him to shoot this time. He uses his ability to ensure a direct hit and fires a strong shot, his arrow infused with magical energy and flames. He strikes the rat man in the eye and partially blinds it. The Lord declares their victory but quickly realizes he celebrated earlier. The freaking rat man is still alive and is about to hit the wall. The creature smashes through the fort's wall with its shoulder and creates a big hole. Meanwhile, Margrave watches the blocking from a distance and notices something off. The monsters are attacking differently now that there are more of them. They appear to have a structured system and are employing real strategies. He thinks about how Prince Ash has survived 3 battles like this already. He understands why the young lord asks him for help, but the old man is also confused because, for someone like Ash, who used to have a bad reputation, he is actually doing a great job. Margrave considers jumping in to help but decides not to. He's retired now, and would rather stay out of it because he has grown old. He thinks about his peaceful life and how he promised himself he wouldn't get involved in any more fights. But then, loud crashing sounds snap him out of it. He turns and sees the rat man breaking through the gate into the city. Margrave pauses as he is unsure whether to head back to his quiet life or step in to help. He thinks about his promise to his wife and feels conflicted. Meanwhile, Ash orders the immediate evacuation of the townspeople on the fort wall. Although the wall is breached, the sewer rats haven't entered yet. He's watching the second wave of rats and tells the rifle squads and artillery to hold the line while the close combat fighters go to the breach. He tells Lucas to lead the sword fighters while the shooters try to create a firewall in front of the breach. He gives Jupiter complete freedom of action. She can attack as soon as she wants, and she needs to kill as many of these monsters as possible without sparing mana because they can be restored with artifacts. She gets ready to act right after. Our hero goes up to Lily and finds out that only the haste artifact is left. He asks about the fire artifact, and Lily says it needs 10 more minutes to recharge. He tells her to use haste on the soldiers for now and to deploy the fire artifact once it's ready. Ash gives Damien a call, and the kid starts crying, feeling bad about not being able to fight well in the war. Ash taps him on the forehead, which surprises him, and tells him that they still need his sharpshooting skills. Before Damien can say anything, he reassures the kid that making mistakes is normal, and that he just needs to stay confident, because his presence alone gives hope to the team. Ash knows this kid is the cheat character in this game. He assigns the kid the task of guarding the last line of defense and shooting any rats that break through the soldiers. Damien agrees and promises His Highness to do his best. Now our hero has done what a lord could do. He watches from the wall as the monsters approach the breach and announces that they are beginning to break through. The soldiers at the destroyed gate look at the hole, seeing monsters starting to climb over the dead rat man in the gap. Lucas swiftly beheads a rat that sneaks through using his new energy-charged sword. He informs the soldiers that the narrow passage will slow the monsters, so they should remain calm and deal with them one by one. The Lord notices an increasing number of rats coming through the wall. He realizes that these creatures are widening the opening by chewing the gate. These rats seem more like moles than sewer rats. Lily says that the fire artifact is fully charged and ready to use. She's about to activate it when something stops her, and she screams. Ash turns around and sees rats swarming the tower, attacking the spellcasters. A dying magician crawls to her and tries to speak, but she also gets killed by the monster's rats. He rushes to help her, punches one of the rats hard, and shouts that it's a royal smackdown straight from the prince. The system registers 15 damage points from the hit, and the rat is thrown off the wall. He then wonders how these creatures managed to climb the wall. Meanwhile, a huge army of rats is flooding into the city through the breach in the wall. Some use their claws to climb the wall. Lily begins roasting the monsters with fire magic. Ash quickly realizes that activating the artifact without Lily's squad might be challenging. A soldier nearby loses his hand to a rat and freezes in shock, unable to react. The screams of other soldiers fill the air as they suffer more injuries. Ash takes note of the mounting casualties, seeing that the shooters meant to provide backup are struggling with their own problems. With a swift blow, Ash takes down another rat on the wall. He glances around and starts to grasp how bad things are getting, fearing the damage might soon be beyond repair. A veteran who just killed a rat suddenly spots something and asks if that's the former Margrave. When he looks toward the field, Ash gets caught off guard and notices a bright glow outside the city. Margrave charges toward the city with his spear raised. The rats stop and turn toward him, distracted by the sunlight on his spear. Ash is shocked when he realizes Margrave has caught the monster's attention. The rats scream and focus on him. Margrave stands firm as the monsters approach. Ash yells at him to stop and think, but Margrave stays quiet, focused on the monsters. Ash thinks back on Margrave's past. When he was young, Margrave grew up in a city that was built to defend against monsters. His father passed away early, leaving Margrave to inherit the title of Margrave. This meant that from a young age, he spent a lot of time hunting and killing monsters. But his life was quite pleasant. Then, a girl with white hair arrived in the city, and things changed altogether. She wanted to sell flowers in a city on the front lines, which confused him since people there needed weapons, not flowers. When he asked her why, she smiled and explained that because flowers don't have practical use, people actually need them. Their beauty comes from how short-lived they are. Margrave didn't get why the girl said that people need more than just survival gear, even during tough times. She believed that things that bring happiness or make you feel good are important too. Margrave suspected she might be a spy and kept visiting her flower shop to find evidence. As time passed, he started learning about different flowers and their names, but he still couldn't understand what she was trying to tell him. A year later, Margrave proposed to the woman. Back on the battlefield, Margrave recalls all those memories. He charges at the army, screaming with no fear and ready to take on the huge number of enemies head-on. Ash wonders if the old commander has lost it because it's a reckless decision to fight the swarm of rats alone. He yells that rushing in like that will get him killed. Just when this old buddy was in the middle of a fierce battle, he finally made it back home after what felt like ages of fighting. When he got back, he found his maid and wife in bed with a little baby. His wife told him they had a baby girl and urged him to come take a look. Margrave carefully held his daughter. He was thrilled to see his baby and didn't even bother to clean the blood and dirt off his face. They named her Evangelina, and his wife asked if he didn't think she was as beautiful as her name. Margrave was still trying to wrap his head around it all, so he couldn't give her an answer. He couldn't believe how much his daughter had captured his heart. When he was out there fighting monsters, everything was straightforward and made sense. But now, everything had suddenly turned upside down. The scene then shifts back to the intense battle, where Ash comes up with a plan for all survivors to regroup for close combat. They can't use guns because they might accidentally hit the Margrave, so only crossbows can be used for long-range attacks. After that, he tells Lucas to gather a group of the toughest soldiers who can stand their ground outside the fort's walls. Their mission is to rescue the Margrave. Lucas tells His Highness that Margrave is the one saving them now. Thanks to his actions, they can attack the enemy from the rear. This is their chance to destroy the rats and return with the Margrave. Ash agrees with his knight's strategy. Soon, the city gates open. Lucas raises his sword and commands the army forward to kill the monsters and rescue Margrave. Ash watches, hoping they make it in time. Margrave tightly grips his spear and dives into the swarm of rats, hitting them with all his might despite being outnumbered. Even with his injuries, he keeps on fighting. No one understands why this old retired lord is getting involved in an intense battle again, especially after choosing to live in his wife's tomb in the orchard. He fights off several monsters with his shield, thinking about his promise to his late wife, but realizing he can't keep it now. He loses his helmet during the fight, but keeps going. After falling from his horse, he uses his spear to get up and charges at the monsters again. Despite spending his whole life trying to understand what his wife always meant, he was sure from the bottom of his heart that her daughter was no different from the flowers, and now he must protect her. He shouts that he will not allow any monsters to pass the wall because his daughter, his only flower, is living on the other side. Margrave keeps fighting, although he is covered with wounds. He slaughters so many rats that the blood fills the ground. But whatever he does can't bring back his lovely wife that this cursed city took from him. But he knows how to kill, and he continues doing it wildly. He charges into the crowd, taking down the monsters one by one. Margrave holds his position, battling until his spear is drenched in blood. Eventually, he stands alone in front of the fort, puzzled by the sudden halt of the advancing monsters. Lucas arrives and tells him that the battle is over, as the monsters have been defeated. The fortress is victorious, but the old commander is badly wounded and has lost an arm. Despite the odds, he turned the tide of the fight all on his own. Later, Lucas tells Ash that they arrived too late to save him. Ash goes to see Damon using magic to heal Margrave, who is lying on the ground after being brutally wounded. Damien also looks hopeless now, so he considers using a high-quality potion to heal Margrave. However, the old brave man refuses, saying it won't help and might make his pain worse. Margrave then asks for help to get up and wants to know if the battle is over. Ash thanks him for his contribution to turning the fate of the war on their side. Margrave looks at the fort and remarks that the wall is broken, but Ash reassures him that no monsters have entered the city and that everyone inside is safe. Margrave feels relieved that his sacrifice was worth it. He hears someone crying and sees his comrades wiping their tears. He asks why they're sad and reminds them that losses are inevitable in a war against monsters. It is just his turn, and there's no need to mourn him. They should be happy they won and survived. Looking up at the sky, Margrave says this is a city of graves, and thanks to those who died, others can live in peace. If they keep mourning the fallen, life will become endless funerals. A decent farewell is fine, but they need to find positive moments in their lives. He tells them to keep living, If anyone should die, it should be him who has already lost hope. He asks the prince to promise something. Ash tells him to say it, and that he'll do his best to fulfill his wish. In a calm voice, the old commander says that if his daughter ever returns, Ash should tell her that her father is sorry for what happened between them. His hand drops, and with the last of his strength, Ash promises to convey his words. Margrave says he won't ask for more. He apologizes to his wife for never fulfilling his promise about their daughter. Ash takes his hand and tells him not to speak like that because he protected the world, not just today, but throughout his life. Instead, everyone is indebted to him. Charles doesn't respond, looking at the sky with fading eyes, apologizing for not doing enough in the end. He no longer hears Ash. Ash suddenly remembers something. He takes out a bag of dried fruit that Margrave gave him earlier. He didn't understand why it mattered, since it was tasteless. Maybe it was for this moment. He puts a piece into Charles's mouth, and Charles begins to chew. The old man recalls the past, saying nothing is sweeter than these grapes. He takes his last breath, dying a heroic death he yearns for. At that moment, the bell rings, signaling the end of the monster attack and that evacuation is no longer needed. The city erupts in joy. He stares at Charles's body, wondering why a man who had lost everything to protect the city and who had despised his role enough to reject passing it on had ultimately returned at the last moment and sacrificed himself for this battle. Ash realizes that it's a tough responsibility to defend these lands as a commander. System notifications pop up, announcing that the second wave has been fended off. A reward is added to his inventory, and Lucas emerges as the MVP once again. Ash comes back to his place and cautiously opens the door. Eider is already freaking out inside. He rushes over to Ash and asks if he's okay. Ash is wearing blood-stained clothes, and before Eider can start praising him, Ash grabs him by his clothes and slams him against the closet. He's really mad and wants to know why this is happening. Eider is confused and asks what he's talking about. Our guy is really angry and tells him how the game is getting way too hard. At first he thought it was just bad luck. But when a living armor attacked and an enemy NPC started controlling monsters in the second wave, he started to get suspicious. So he demands answers forcefully. Eider tells him he's got his back, even though Ash may not believe him. He mentions the necklace Ash got after training and says that its real power will be revealed when he faces the third wave. He urges Ash to keep fighting, even after he learns the truth, because there's no other option. Curious, Ash asks what he means by not being able to leave. He responds that Ash won't be able to leave this world. Meanwhile, we see a mysterious girl with white hair and green eyes walking through the shadows in the dark forest. It's been 3 days since the second stage of the game. Flags are at half-staff, and the whole city feels heavy and gloomy. But honestly, this isn't anything new for Crossroad. Now, they just have to gear up for the next wave. Ash and Lucas come back to the estate, tired from the routine. The system window shows 12 days and 9 hours until the third wave. Ash thinks they still have enough days to fix the wall and get ready for the next stage. He looks out the window and sees a figure near the wall. A girl comes flying to the carriage. He asks Lucas to check out this kid. The girl swings her spear and accidentally smashes the carriage apart. The horse freaks out as the blow barely misses Ash. She feels embarrassed since she was only trying to hit the wheel but ended up wrecking the whole thing. A little later, Lucas checks on his lord to make sure he's okay. He angrily asks who the girl is and how she dared attack them, saying she'll be arrested and the court will deal with her. He points his sword at her while the girl stands calmly and just watches them. Ash watches and asks Lucas if he seriously wants to put a kid on trial. Lucas stays serious and says not to judge her by her age as she's clearly had some special training. Then he points at her clothes, notices the Royal Academy uniform and badge, and asks what an Academy student is even doing here and why she attacked. The girl fires back, saying she should be the one asking those old geezers the same thing. Lucas and Ash get irritated and snap together, asking who she's calling old. The girl points to the estate, saying it's her house. She says she just got back to find a bunch of armed strangers she doesn't even recognize. How was she supposed to know if they were bandits or conquerors? Anyone in her position would have stopped them for an explanation. Ash retorts that anyone would have used words, not broken the carriage. The girl smugly explains that the Academy's rule in uncertain situations is to demonstrate strength to take control. However, she hadn't meant to break the carriage that badly. Still, she demands they explain who they are and why they're at her house, warning them to choose their answers wisely. Lucas tells her to stop talking nonsense. He says that the estate belongs to the landlord of Crossroad, pointing to Ash. The girl responds, saying the landlord is her father, which surprises Ash and Lucas. Ash understands the situation as he remembers her father and asks if her name is Evangeline Cross. Surprised that he knows her name, Evangeline points her weapon at him and asks how he knows about her. He explains that her father had told him about her, He noticed that her eyes looked like Margrave Cross, so she must be her daughter. But he remembers something. Evangeline from the game was a tall SSR girl, yet now she looks like a kid. The girl is boiling with anger, but our boy is lost in his own thoughts. All the other game characters are identical in the game and in this world, so he can't understand why this girl is so different. Lucas quietly mentions that his lord has offended the young girl by commenting on her appearance. Ash didn't mean any harm, so he attempted to clarify his words to Evangeline. However, the girl doesn't listen. She believes Ash deliberately mocked her insecurities. She confronts him by warning him if he's even worth living anymore. She takes her shield from behind her back and puts it in front as she gets into a fighting stance. She moves her foot and says she has changed her mind. She only wanted to stop the carriage and drop them off, but now things need to be handled differently. Saying this, she charges toward them. Ash is shocked as she looks exactly like her father, which reminds him of when Margrave first attacked him. Evangeline strikes with her spear, but Lucas blocks it with his sword and tells her to lower it since she's messing with Prince Ash, the third prince of the Empire. Evangeline accuses them of taking over her house and now pretending to be Lord Ash. She kicks Lucas's sword hand away and swings her spear, saying there's no way she'd believe that Playboy Ash would stay in this village. Who do they think they're fooling? She strikes again, pulling her shield arm back. Lucas watches her closely and quickly counters her attack. Ash wonders what's wrong with him living here. Evangeline jumps back, asking if he's even capable of anything. Lucas tells her he's a graduate of the same academy. He points his sword at her and introduces himself as Lucas McGregor, a disciple of the 369th class from the Royal Academy. He adds that Prince Ash behind him is also a graduate. Ash is surprised and asks if that's true. Lucas says the prince was the most legendary of the 369 students. Ash asks how. Lucas gets nervous and admits that while many royals are famous, Ash avoided studying so much that he took first place but then went from the bottom. Ash realizes he's been kicked out. Evangeline smiles and asks if they think she is stupid to be tricked. Both fall silent when she introduces herself as Evangeline Cross, the top of the 375th class. Without missing a beat, she charges at them, yelling for them to say hello to their new colleague. She and Lucas quickly get into one-on-one combat, trading fast and powerful blows. Ash watches from afar, thinking that a fight between two SSR ranks is on another level. He shouts for them to stop, insisting it's all a misunderstanding, but they ignore him and keep fighting. He wonders if they can even hear him, so he decides to step in, even though his attack is quite shitty. He runs toward Evangeline and he lightly touches her. A system window shows a jackpot hit 777 points of maximum damage. Ash is confused as he watches a young girl being surrounded by a spinning, colorful light. Ash can't believe how hard he hit the girl, sending her flying against a wall. Lucas, while impressed by the power of the blow, is worried when he sees Evangeline knocked out. He's horrified that his lord could strike a little child so forcefully. Ash insists he didn't mean to. They both stand still for a moment as Ash asks if she survived. Her shield and spear are shattered nearby. However, we dive into her childhood memory, where her mother checks on her during monster attacks. Sure, here's a more casual version. She told her mom not to worry because her dad always took care of the monsters. Later, she realized that her mom's true fear was losing her husband and the day her daughter would have to face the battle on her own. Suddenly, Evangeline wakes up in her room. She looks around and realizes where she is. She stays quiet in bed until the door opens. Surprised, she hides under the blanket as Ash comes in, dragging a chair over and sitting beside her. She thinks it's her dad and starts to speak, but Ash remains silent. She hesitantly wonders if it's been 3 years since they last saw each other. Has he been spending his time fighting off the monsters? But she hesitates to speak at first. Ash apologizes, clarifying that he's not her father. She instinctively reaches for her weapon but pauses when she sees the bandages on her body, recalling that she was injured during the fight the previous day. He reminds her that she hasn't fully healed yet. She remembers what happened earlier and accuses him of being the same weak old man from yesterday who brutally knocked her out. He insists that he's not an old man, but she keeps accusing him of pretending. Finally, the boy loses his temper and shouts that he's not old. He finally calms down and insists that it's time for a proper introduction. With a serious tone, he reveals himself as Ash-born Hater Everblack, the third prince of the Empire and the current landlord of Crossroad. Evangeline can't help but stare at him in disbelief and dismisses it as nonsense. She even goes as far as mocking him, claiming that if he's a prince, then she must be the queen of the dukedom. Just as she's about to make a sarcastic remark, she notices him holding an object. Her expression changes to one of shock as she takes the object, instantly recognizing the symbol of the Everblack royal family. Unable to believe her eyes, she hesitantly asks if he's truly the prince. She turns her back while shaking for having a shitty behavior with Lord. She leans in excitedly and says that she's his biggest fan. She eagerly asks for an autograph, leaving our boy puzzled by her sudden enthusiasm. Nonetheless, he agrees and signs a piece of paper. He asks if she really admires a lousy lord like Ash. The girl affirms without hesitation, expressing her deep affection for a crazy character like him. He laughs and thanks her but asks why she feels that way. She strikes a dramatic pose and shares her daring ideas of getting into trouble, like rebelling against her father. She proudly says that she wants to embarrass her royal family. That's why she left home and joined the Royal Academy on her own, only to find out they trained non-stop. She had to drop her rebellion and focus to avoid getting kicked out. He's like, wow, she's not an average student. Evangeline graduated from the academy in just 3 years, when it normally takes 6. She's a total genius and totally left her mark on the academy's history. She says her surroundings held her back, and the most rebellious thing she did was not keeping in touch with her dad during training. He just gives her a flat look and tells her that's not much of a rebellion. Evangeline explains that everything changed when she heard about Ash. Even as the Emperor's son, he became famous as the Empire's biggest troublemaker. His weekly stunts, like filling a room with gold coins or covering the floor with gems, even made the Emperor faint in anger. She calls him her idol and says she's been inspired by his madness. Our guy is feeling pretty embarrassed and asks, "Is this for real?" Even though he hasn't been on his best behavior, he's totally surprised to find out that Ash is someone's idol. He thinks Ash's trashy life somehow paid off as someone like him. Evangeline wants to know where her father is, and says she wants to bring trouble to her father too, following his example. She hopes he's not hiding from her. He looks at her for a few seconds and asks if she hasn't heard the news. Evangeline says she just graduated and returned from the academy. What's going on? He calmly apologizes and tells her that her father died protecting the city in a battle with monsters. He died heroically, and Ash recorded and sent all his achievements to the palace. Her father will receive the King's Medal for honor and bravery. The young girl learns that her father's funeral will take place in 3 days with full honors. She's upset that she didn't have a chance to express her anger towards her dad. Ash, who feels responsible for her father's death, is willing to bear the blame and accept her anger. She calmly asks if he's really the prince she knows because the prince she knows only thinks of himself, calling him a freak. Our hero asks her to stop insulting him on his face. He tells her the servants are at her disposal and leaves. Still, she stops him and apologizes for everything, including the carriage. Ash accepts her apology with a smile and tells her to rest. Later, Ash sees Evangeline's portrait in the system window and learns that she's turning 16 this year, which is 2 years younger than Damon. She appears earlier in the game than expected due to various circumstances. Ash now realizes the reason she is shorter than the game character. If she appears just after 2 years, she will be a grown-up character because everyone evolves faster in this world. The system recognizes her as a top-tier swordswoman with impressive stats, making her a valuable asset in battle. Her exceptional agility and resistance to threats make her perfectly suited for the game's tank and cheat character role. He sees a system panel that says she makes mistakes in battle, but they fade as she gains experience. Ash is confused because he knows that she is just a young girl who should be enjoying herself instead of battling. Meanwhile, Eider ominously addresses him as classic gamer geek, hinting at the possibility of adding the powerful SSR Evangeline to their main squad. Ash is really tempted to see Lucas and Evangeline, the 2 SSRs. But he remembers that her father's last wish for her daughter was to give her the life that her mother always desired. He promises to honor that wish, even though it pains him. Eider wonders if Ash's principles will become a burden, which seems clear from his face, but he insists he won't compromise for profit. He'd rather stay true to himself, even in a harsh world. The boss knows our gamer cleared the hellish stage before without following any of these rules. But the boy says he doesn't want to make the same mistake again. Eider thinks it's a bad call, but our guy insists because it will toughen him up. He then tells Eider to look after Evangeline because she's still a kid. Eider then reports that her SSR-ranked spear and shield are too beat up to be used again. This stunned our boy, who realized their value and regretted not preventing Lucas from fighting with her. Eider suggested using some mana to develop her new weapons. Ash's face got more displeased as they had also spent all the mana reserves on the creation of a mana gun. Eider can't believe that Ash used up all the mana to power the turret and tells him off for wasting such a precious resource. Anxious, Ash asks if he can give her his gloves, but Eider says they're not the same. With determination, Ash decides to gather his crew and head to the dungeon for some mana hacks. They have to go there anyway. Afterward, in the backyard of the estate, he gathers his crew. Lily gripes about having to go with them in the dungeon again and wonders why he doesn't take the newbies instead. He explains that they're all N rank and not suitable for the heroic crew. However, she wants to step down from her position, but Ash doesn't have anyone to replace her. Evangeline shows up and wonders why everyone is gathered. Ash introduces her as the Margrave Cross's daughter. The group expresses their sympathy for her father, and Evangeline thanks them. She then asks where they're going, and Ash tells her they're heading to the dungeons. She has a feeling they're headed to the dungeon under the lake. Ash asks if she knows about it. She says she thought it was just a lie. She heard rumors about adventurers trying to go there, but no one ever came back. He nods and says yeah, no one returned except for them. She doubts it and asks if there are truly underground tunnels that even her family, who owned the land for generations, never knew about. She wonders if His Highness really went there and back a few times, and if she got that right. He teases her, saying maybe her family knew but just didn't bother telling her. He figures she ran off before learning what she was supposed to, so if there's a secret about the kingdom under the lake, she was probably too young to hear it. He shrugs and turns away, saying that it doesn't really matter if she believes it or not, as it's up to her. Then he tells her they're heading to the dungeon anyway. Evangeline says she wants to go too. She is confident that she was the top graduate of her academy year, and she's sure her combat skills will prove more useful than anyone else's. He knows this, but doesn't get a chance to say more before she insists that if there's really a dungeon under the lake, she wants to see it herself. As the sole heir of the Cross family, and with her parents having died fighting the monster from the lake, she feels she deserves to know their killers. Ash watches her for a moment and thinks this is exactly why he didn't want her involved, as her father wanted to keep her safe. He asks if she can handle it after the emotional breakthrough from her father's death. She insists she's fine. Ash keeps pushing, asking if she's cooled down yet. She looks down for a moment, then utters she's more scared of doing nothing and going crazy. She'd rather be out there doing something, so she eagerly asks Ash to take her into the dungeon. Ash agrees since he knows he can't keep saying no forever. Lily gets excited about finding vacations before he can say anything else. Her excitement takes over, and the squad regroups. The system panel just got updated, and it looks like everyone's in high spirits because of their determined leader. Plus, the teamwork of the two knights is giving a 20% boost to everyone's defense. Eider brings over a spear and shield, apologizing for them being all they have at the moment. She easily grabs the spear and spins it in one hand, and she mentions how it reminds her of using a similar weapon long ago. Ash is impressed by the squad's improvement. He gets everyone ready and asks if they're prepared to go. The squad members look at him with determination. He amazes the little girl by creating a portal from stones and tells her they'll discuss the team on the way because it's time to move out. Evangeline stands there in shock, watching the portal form. He mentions that her colleague will guide her to the dungeon beneath her family estate. The group enters the dungeon through a portal, and the system warns that NPCs can either help or hinder based on their choices. It also lets them know they are in the first area of a District 1 sewer. Lucas is confused, asking why they end up in a place they have already explored. Ash explains that with their new teammate Evangeline, he wants to test her teamwork in an easier spot. Lucas wonders if this means the monsters are back. Ash explaining that monsters respawn after each defensive round, which means they can collect items and XP endlessly. It's perfect for leveling up their new member. The team usually divides into two groups, with one group taking down bosses while the other levels up and gets more gear. However, this time he decides to keep everyone together so that Evangeline can practice working with the full team. Suddenly, Evangeline gets sick and throws up. Ash asks if teleporting made her seasick, while Lucas jokes that young people can't handle travel well. She gets annoyed by him and snaps back, saying she's good to go. Watching them argue, Out Hero realizes that despite his efforts, they never stopped quarrel. He wonders how he'll ever fix it. After the situation calms down, the little girl is amazed by how real the dungeon feels. She asks Ash how he knows about this place, mentioning that even as a member of the Cross family, she's never heard of it. Ash gives an unclear answer, hinting that the Emperor had his reasons for sending him. To brush off the conversation, he strikes a pose and amazes his hardcore fans like little children. In tough spots, showing off his lord's rank inherit from Ash's father usually solves the problem. Anyhow, they reach a dark corridor, and Ash tells them to light their torches. Evangeline waves hers around, complaining about how dark it is. Ash says she should get used to it since the darkness is the one thing that never changes in the dungeon. He smirks and teases her, asking if she's scared, which causes her to snap back that she's not afraid of anything. The system window appears, showing that none of the 4 rooms in the dried-up sewer have been cleared. The group walks in a line down the corridor until they encounter their first significant challenge, a large stone golem that starts moving toward them. Evangeline notices it right away, and Ash assesses the situation. The system instructs them to defeat the golem and 4 other creatures. Ash knows that there's a problem, but there are only a few monsters. The downside is that they are hard to fend off. Evangeline tightens her grip on her spear and stands in front of the monsters. Ash notices she's nervous, probably because she's never been in a real fight before. He claps his hands and asks if they're ready to test their skills. Without thinking, Evangeline charges at the golem. It swings a massive punch, but she blocks it with her shield, bracing against the impact. She jumps back, keeping her eyes on the golem, and wonders if her shield is absorbing its power. Her shield starts to glow, and she activates her first skill, Damage Fix, transferring the energy to her spear. Smirking, she tells the golem it's her turn. She charges again and stabs the golem, activating her second skill, Damage Payback. Ash watches, impressed by how Evangeline balances defense and attack. She's looking like the best tank in the game right now. She rushes at the other monsters, declaring she's going to take them all down. Ash knows how she works. She absorbs the damage with her first skill, then hits back hard with her second. Sure, her ability has limits, but it's still incredibly strong. As Evangeline suddenly slips and falls, the system explains that it's due to her usual clumsiness. Ash quickly points at her and tells the squad to help her out. The rest of the team finishes off the golems with quick attacks. Ash thinks this dungeon run is going as usual. Evangeline, embarrassed, yells at them to leave at least one more monster for her, trying to make up for her earlier slip. The system notifies them that the first zone, the dried sewer, is cleared. Ash smiles, thinking they wrapped it up fast, and it's been less than an hour. The first part was easy, barely a challenge. He tells the group that now they've warmed up, it's time to head to a tougher area. They should take a quick break, but he warns them that the next part will be much harder. They reach the second district, the back streets, and Evangeline looks around, asking what kind of place this is. Ash isn't sure since it's his first time there too. Later, Ash watches Lucas and Evangeline exchange glances while they eat. He wonders if they're a thing now, and if he's supposed to compete with Lucas over something like this. He asks Damien how he's doing. The kid reassures him that he's fine and not tired. He casually drops a gun beside him and tells him to take it. The kid looks confused, so he explains that it's an level 25 magic gun, with a 10% chance to land a critical hit when attacking from behind. Ash remembers how he got it from the last room's chest. It's almost as strong as a cannon, but way more portable. The gun is powerful, but has a wide range and low ammo, so hitting targets is tricky. It wouldn't be in high demand, but with Damien's perfect aim, that changes everything. Ash tells Damien to use it as a backup. Damien notes that it's much heavier than his crossbow. Ash thinks to himself that Damien just needs to get stronger because eventually, he'll probably have to carry 5 or 6 of these to make up for the ammo shortage. Damien thanks Ash, but Ash thinks he should be the one thanking Damien for having such an overpowered ability. Ash stands up, grabs his lamp, and asks if everyone's rested. Lucas and Evangeline, still bickering over food, finally turn around. Ash asks if they're ready to move on. The system pops up, letting them know they've entered the hidden alley of the second district. Together, they start walking through the gloomy streets. Ash looks at the group and says it's time to clear the next area of the underground city. As they walked through the city, the group carefully navigated the alleys under the lake. It was completely dark, which made him very tense. He was used to the darkness in the game, but walking in near complete darkness was unsettling. This was a hideout for monsters, so he was always on edge, never knowing when a giant golem might attack. Just the thought gave him goosebumps. Suddenly, a massive one-eyed monster made of steam parts and billowing smoke blocked their path. They were notified that they needed to destroy the elite steam golems of the 15th level. Ash is unsure if this place should be considered the first room. The many alleys make it hard to know where everything is. A large golem starts walking toward them and reaches out to attack. Lucas faces the monster and moves closer. He quickly draws his sword and strikes the monster's arm by surprise. Ash warns him to be careful because there's another monster. Suddenly, another huge golem rushes out of the building towards them, catching Lucas's attention. Evangeline rushes towards it and blocks a strong blow from one of the golems with her shield. She struggles to withstand the golem's attack and asks if these monsters are stronger than the ones before. Ash believes it's a good time to strategize while dealing with the challenging knights. He instructs Jupiter and Damien to focus on attacking the golem that Lucas is engaging. He assesses the roles of Lucas and Evangeline, noting that Lucas is both a damage dealer and a tank, while Evangeline primarily serves as a tank. He emphasizes to Evangeline that her priority is to defend herself and contain the golem. Ash anticipates that the large size of the monsters suggests there will be few of them, but they will be formidable opponents. During the battle, Lucas evades the golem's attack and strikes back with his sword. Ash realizes that these monsters have elite titles, making one-on-one fights a bad idea. They travel as a group for scenarios like this. He orders Lucas to take down the monster. Lucas quickly maneuvers between the golem's legs and delivers a strong blow to its leg. The monster staggers and kneels. Ash calls out to Jupiter, informing her that her target is the golem's chest armor. She channels electrical magic into her hand and releases a powerful strike at the monster, but it only causes a small dent in its armor. Jupiter says that maybe it won't be so easy. Damien holds his gun to use his ability and takes aim. Ash says that should be enough. He thinks that their sniper won't need a bigger hole. He tells the kid to shoot right at the crack in the monster's chest. Damien fires his gun, and a powerful energy shoots out of the barrel. The magical projectile flies out fast, and Damien is almost thrown back due to the recoil. Shocked by the recoil, the kid asks about the golem. Our hero smiles and points at the monster, saying he can see it for himself. Damien is impressed by his accurate shot, noticing the huge hole in the golem's body. Finally, Lucas destroys the monster's body and feels relieved to be rid of it. Ash says that it is an elite monster, which is much stronger than ordinary ones. The strange thing is that the difficulty has increased so much compared to the first zone. He thinks that it seems that in the second zone, they will mainly fight with a small number of elite creatures. In other words, all their fights will be boss battle types. Evangeline has been continuously blocking the monster's attacks. She asks if they should take a rest. Ash comments that she was so quiet while blocking that he almost forgot about her. Evangeline questions what he means by silently, as the golem is about to break her shield. Ash tells her to hold on a little longer. He turns to the rest of the group and says they need to attack the monster faster. After that, things got easier every time the alley widened. They were ready for the appearance of golems. They had difficulties in the first room as they were not prepared for a surprise attack, and a mimic tried to eat him disguised as a treasure chest. Ash is considering whether walking into the trap intentionally would make the enemy believe they fell for it. He notices his squad members laughing and is glad he could lift their spirits. After some time, Lucas tries to touch the dark liquid, but it pushes him away. Turning away, he takes it as a sign to move forward since there's no other way out of the alley. Damien checks a nearby building and finds the doors are boarded up. Jupiter notes the doors are sealed with a strong spell, making them impossible to force open. Damien wonders if someone was trying to hide from what was happening around them. Ash disagrees, pointing out that they are standing in front of a boarded-up building, indicating that someone was trying to prevent something inside from escaping. Damien asks what's inside the building. Ash admits he doesn't know, but he doesn't think it matters. They won't be able to find out anyway. They decide to move on. As they continue, the system alerts them that 3 out of 4 ordinary rooms have been cleared. They all look around together, and he warns them to stay alert so they don't run into an unexpected golem in the extensive area. Evangeline noticed a dried-up fountain with a statue. Ash speculated that the statue might depict a king. They wondered why the statues on the sides were destroyed while the statue of the king remained intact. In the distance, Damien spotted a flickering light and pointed it out to the prince. Ash was surprised to see light in the dungeon, which wasn't from their lamps. He suggested they go check, keeping their weapons ready. As they walked together, he reflected that in a city infested with monsters, so the only thing more frightening than the monsters was a human. He couldn't understand why anyone would willingly live there. He's unsure whether the person in front of him is a foe or a friend, so he can't let his guard down. Looking around, he notices a lot of debris with a blue flame burning nearby. He wonders if these are remains of destroyed steam golems. They all spot a human figure standing ahead. He's surprised that this person might have taken down the monsters alone. The person turns out to be No Name, who is surprised that they've already made it this far. Our hero reassures her that she is indeed the same girl he met in the dungeon. He asks her why she's here, finding it strange. They've met before, but in all 742 attempts to beat the game, he's never encountered this NPC. He can't tell if she's an enemy or an ally. This strange character explains she's just wandering around and offers to show them something for their efforts. Ash's squad tenses up as she takes out something hidden in her clothes. Instead, she lays out a red cloth filled with attractive items. She invites them to come closer and choose something, saying they don't need to be shy. Ash is surprised when he asks if she's a merchant NPC. She assures that she is. She explains about a promotion where every purchase includes a gift along with a 30% discount on the first item. She encourages him to consider it carefully before missing the limited offer. Ash stares in silence, carefully examining the items before asking questions. She further explains that she found these rare treasures while wandering the kingdom under the lake. Everyone looks at the goods in excitement as Ash notices their high-quality equipments from this NPC. He asks about the cost. She explains that money from the outside world is worthless here, so she only accepts mana stones. However, he has exchanged all of his mana stones for money, and now has none left. He lays out the items he collected earlier and asks what they could trade for. She inspects the items and comments that they are mediocre. However, since it's her first sale and she sees his dedication, she allows him to pick one item as a small reward. He excitedly asks if he can really choose anything, and she reassures him, saying she keeps her word and tells him to choose boldly. He looks over the items, trying to choose something memorable. Jupiter picks up a 100-year-old ginseng, an anti-aging food, and suggests that eating it would make her feel 10 years younger. He considers it but decides that equipment is more useful than food. He disappoints Jupiter by saying if she wants it, she'll have to buy it with her own money. Lucas picks up a pair of shoes with a purple aura and asks if they might be useful. Ash notices the shoes have a strong acceleration effect and asks if Lucas is looking to run faster. Lucas replies that they'd be better for his highness, helping him escape danger more easily. Ash appreciates his concern but decides not to take the shoes since Lucas is not the main fighter. Damien picks up an item and asks if it's an automatic potion brewing stand. Ash confirms, noting it produces healing potions regularly. The kid thinks it could be useful for healing soldiers in the temple. Ash agrees but thinks potions are already common in the outside world, so it might be a waste to pick this. He then turns to Evangeline, who's looking over the items, and asks for her opinion. She replies that as a temporary member of the group, she's not interested in most equipment. The only gear she values is her spear and shield, which are currently being repaired. That's enough for her. Ash and Lucas realize they came to find her equipment. They wonder how they forgot, as greed had distracted them. Ash quietly asks her if she has a spear and shield. She pulls out a black-yellow shield and a spear. The system identifies them as the Devil of the Spear and the Giant of the Shield, both SSR rank and level 35. The spear increases damage to weak spots, and the shield reduces damage when blocking. He is impressed by the design and performance of the items but realizes they're a set. The system shows that using both boosts their efficiency by 50%, and without the pair, he loses a valuable buff. He hesitates in frustration, unsure what to do since he can only pick one. The merchant reminds him that the promotion includes a free gift, so he can take both items for the same price. He is surprised and asks if it's really true. She gives him the shield and spear, confirming that he can take both. In return, he must promise to explore further and trade with her whenever they meet again. He looks at her, realizing she's more than just a mysterious saint, as she's like a real god to him now. He smiles and promises to do what she asked, feeling like a beginner receiving a gift from a pro gamer. He calls out to Evangeline, telling her the gear is for her. He knows it's time to confess that her equipment was broken beyond repair, and that this is his way of making up for it. She looks at him with a blank expression and admits that she started the fight, and he only tried to stop her. Even though her gear was ruined, she believes it's her responsibility, so he shouldn't feel obligated. He smiles and suggests that she consider it a gift instead. He surprises her with a new spear and shield, insisting that she should appreciate how great the items are and consider them a graduation present from the Empire's finest prince and her idol. Surely she can't refuse a gift from royalty. He then thinks of Margrave Cross, who sacrificed himself for the city. While this can't compare to what he truly deserves, he feels it's the least he can do for Margrave's daughter. She blushes slightly, looks at the gift, thanks her lord, and promises to take care of it. He tells her there is no need to thank him. Jupiter looks concerned and asks His Highness, what about her equipment? He replies that he already pays her well, but he's tired of her constant requests and plans to buy her more items to enhance her magic later. Lucas also looks sad and asks what about him. Ash reminds him that he recently gave him armor, wondering if this attitude is spreading because he's always upgrading their gear. Damien assures him that he holds no grudge. Our boy thinks back to the expensive gun he recently gave him and wonders if Damien is really in sync with the rest of the group. After gathering enough crystal, Jupiter says she wants to buy anti-aging food. No Name agrees to the deal, and with a sly smile, Jupiter says she will be able to live longer. Ash, in surprise, wonders where Jupiter got the magic stone. As No Name packs up her things, he asks if she knows the man who plays the flute. Curious, she asks for more details. He describes a bard with a pointy black hat and mask, playing a flute that seems to control monsters. No Name reflects for a moment and says while many odd people roam the kingdom, this one is famous. She knows who he is. This surprised our hero as the flute man wasn't a big deal in the game, but he seems to be famous here. No Name points ahead and tells them that if they continue straight, they'll find a large camp between the 3rd and 4th zones. This is a safe place where most intelligent creatures in the kingdom gather. Ash already knows this place from the game because it's a safe zone which will unlock after the 3rd zone, a hub for quests and new allies, full of various NPCs. No Name suggests that they might find the flute man there. Even if not, they'll gather useful information. She adds they should reach it easily, and before parting mentions they will surely meet again if they survive. Damen comments that having a merchant in a place like this is interesting, but Lucas doesn't think so. He explains that she's too strong as it's odd how easily she destroys golems, almost like she's relaxing while doing it. Ash dismisses the concern, saying it's not that strange. He knows once Lucas max out his level and gather a full set of gear, he can match her strength. To others, she might seem like a monster, but to our boy, she feels like a friendly NPC. A bad person wouldn't just hand out SSR rank items. He tells the group that the boss has been waiting and believes the next room is the boss's lair. Looking at the system window showing the number of rooms left, he thinks it's time to take down the boss and claim the treasure chests. Together, they step through the broken door of a building. They notice the damage, and someone remarks that it looks like something forced its way out. He adds that whatever did this didn't even feel the seal. They don't know what kind of creature it is, but they'll find out soon enough. They have no choice but to press forward. Evangeline expresses worry and says she doesn't want to go in. Damien agrees, suggesting they turn back. Ash turns to them, smiles, and tells them to quiet down. He says they didn't come this far to stop at the boss's door, so they have to keep going. He moves ahead and surveys the large building. As everyone glances around, someone comments on the massive pile of garbage. Lucas mentions the awful smell and suggests the place must have been underwater for a long time. Ash casually suggests they might be under a lake, now could be a reason for it. Suddenly Damien's hand trembles as he points at something in fear. He points at a massive steam golem hidden in the rubble. Ash is taken aback as he realizes it's no ordinary pile of trash. The system alerts them that they must defeat the giant steam golem of level 20. Our hero is stunned as the system window pops up. He remembers the boss rat from the first zone, just like this boss monster with a human name. Anyhow, the giant creature slowly rises, muttering about waking up again. Its core glows red as it lifts its hands toward them, energy building for an attack. It declares, "Time to take out the trash."